Part 8. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 74. Chapter 73 The Growing Steve. While Luo Guang was researching the anti-B.O.W linear particle impact cannon, Claire and Steve on the island were still trying to survive. A few hours ago, seeing Luo Guang running to chase Alfred Ashford, Claire and Steve hurried to chase him, but in the end they were still a step too late, and the door to the secret passage closed automatically. Shit, Steve almost rushed into the secret passage, but the secret door moved sideways and closed directly. Steve couldn't stop his feet and bumped into it, and couldn't help cursing. Seeing this, Claire came to Steve, lifted his bangs, raised her head slightly, checked carefully for a while, and said, "It's okay, it doesn't look like there's any skin broken, just a little bruise." The two were very close, which made Steve, the innocent little boy, a little at a loss, and he didn't pay attention to what Claire said. After Claire moved away from him a little, Steve embarrassedly turned his face aside, looked at the secret passage door, and asked, "What should we do now, Claire?" Steve paused slightly before calling Claire's name. However, Claire did not notice that Steve was a little strange. She took out the walkie-talkie and tried to contact Luo Guang, but there was no response. She didn't know whether the radio signal could not be received in the secret passage. Unable to contact Luo Guang, who was familiar with Lotford Island, Claire could only think seriously about what to do next. She said, "Although I don't know why Luo Guang chose to chase him alone, I think he must have his reasons. It's just that the situation was urgent at the time, so he didn't say it. Let's not wait here blindly, and continue to explore this ghost place to find a way to escape." Perhaps he had an inexplicable hostility towards the other men who appeared around Claire. Steve, who was saved by Luo Guang, said, "But there is no reason for him not to respond to our radio call. And Luo Guang's shooting skills are not bad. He saved me from the zombie dog's mouth with one shot before, but you see that the shotgun he just shot to cover us, the bullets all hit the wall." Steve actually disliked Luo Guang a little and didn't trust him. He always felt that Luo Guang was hiding a lot of secrets and spoke half-truthfully. But Luo Guang had saved him after all, and Claire seemed to trust him very much, so he didn't show it. Claire was thinking about whether to tell Steve about Luo Guang, but in the end, Claire decided not to tell Steve for the time being. After all, if she did this without discussing it with Luo Guang, it would be like betraying Luo Guang's trust. So after thinking about it, Claire persuaded, "Maybe Luo Guang is busy chasing the enemy so it is inconvenient to respond to us, or maybe the secret passage can block the radio signal. Steve, I ran to find you who was chased by the monster before, and Luo Guang was alone at that time. If he really colluded with Alfred or others secretly, wouldn't Luo Guang just go to them at that time? And when you saved me just now, we all fell to the ground. At that time, he could have solved us directly with a shotgun. Was it necessary to do so many tricks? Or is there any value in us that is worth Luo Guang's acting for so long?" That's right. Although Steve was still unconvinced, he had to admit that Claire's analysis was correct one by one. After all, although Luo seemed to be hiding some secrets, he didn't do anything bad along the way. Claire was relieved to see that the other party had figured it out. It was the best of both worlds to convince Steve without revealing Luo Guang's true identity. After talking about Luo Guang, the two could only continue to explore the mansion and find a way to the port through the mansion. However, Claire missed one thing at this time, that is, Wesker was still on Rothford Island. Not long after Claire and Steve set out to explore, Wesker controlled the mechanism and led the two into the research institute under the mansion, and then sat in front of the monitoring table to watch the Hunter 2 airdropped by his organization attack Claire and the others. In fact, before Claire went to the prison management room, someone had already been there, and that was Wesker. Wesker's previous Umbrella ID card had been cancelled, so he logged into the umbrella system on the computer through the ID card of the deputy captain of the prison guard and checked the information inside. Starting from the latest information, Wesker saw at a glance that Claire had been captured and sent to this island. In fact, Claire was sent to Lotford Island because the organization behind Wesker had put Claire on the list of people who needed to be transported to the island. This time, the intelligence check confirmed that Claire had been transported to the island before he launched the attack. It was also Wesker's selfish desire. He wanted to use Claire to hook Chris out here. Thinking of this, Wesker retrieved Chris's information and wanted to send an anonymous email to Chris, but was interrupted by the organization's emergency contact. After finishing his work and going back to send an email, Wesker found that the computer had been touched by someone, and found the record of sending emails in the mailbox, so he knew that Claire had been here and sent a letter for help to her friends. Looking at Claire and the two people surrounded by hunters in the surveillance, Wesker imagined Chris's angry expression when he saw his sister's body, and smiled. Claire and Steve, who were blocked in the corridor of the Institute by the Hunter 2, stood back to back, each holding the strongest weapon in their hands and started shooting. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. After completing the encirclement, the Earth Green Hunter IIS immediately charged in the direction of the two, and were knocked down one by the bullets of the two without surprise. The intelligence of the hunters allowed them to know how to block the enemy in the corridor, but they could not let them understand that this narrow corridor also limited their advantage of agility. This distance of less than 20 meters became an insurmountable chasm for these hunters. The two breathed a sigh of relief, and the shotgun in Steve's hand also completed its mission. All the 12-gauge shotgun shells given by Luo Guang were used up. Suddenly, some sounds came from the ceiling vent a few meters in front of Steve. Then a smaller Hunter 2 fell from the vent, without any pause, and rushed straight to Steve in front of him. Steve was startled, stepped back, and leaned on Claire's back. Claire, who had just dealt with the Hunter in front of him and was changing the magazine of her M16 assault rifle, heard the sound and quickly threw down the gun and magazine. She turned around and pushed Steve away with one hand, and picked up the Calico M-100P pistol on her waist with the other hand, and pulled the trigger at the Hunter who rushed over. Da-da-da. The storm of bullets instantly submerged the Hunter at close range. Although it was only 0.22 LR pistol bullets, the quantity was large enough to stop the Hunter's momentum directly. Steve, who was pushed aside by Claire, finally reacted, took out his golden double guns, and emptied the magazine at the Hunter. The sneak-attacking Hunter fell to the ground with a bang, but the two did not relax immediately, and fled directly into a room. Who Steve panted heavily and relaxed a little. He wanted to change the bullets for his pistol, but found that his hands were shaking and he couldn't successfully put the magazine into the gun grip. Unlike the previous attack by the zombie dog, this time no one interrupted Steve's fear of death, which made Steve feel scared after the adrenaline subsided. On the other side, Claire, who picked up the M16 assault rifle and the magazine, changed the bullets. Seeing this, she walked over, held Steve's trembling hands, and helped him finish loading the bullets. Steve was startled by Claire's action, pulled his hand out, and jumped away quickly. Claire thought that it was her sudden action that scared Steve, who was still in a state of shock, and asked, "Are you feeling better?" "No, it's okay," Steve said in a panic. Seeing this, Claire didn't say much. She was worried that excessive concern would stimulate the other party's self-esteem. After a short rest, the two continued to set off, and this time, watching the surveillance Wesker through the door, leading a long-handed monster to Claire and the others. Then, Wesker took the data storage device used to move data from the computer and prepared to set off for the Antarctic base whose coordinates had been discovered. But before that, Wesker looked back at the figures of Chris and Jill who appeared in the surveillance, and then left the monitoring room. Just as Wesker planned, Claire and Steve met the long-handed monster in a place with a freight elevator. Hand monster. A rolling door suddenly opened without warning, and a long-handed monster nearly 2 people tall walked out from inside, stretched out its arms to hook the wall, and flashed in front of Claire, and directly grabbed Claire's head with its huge right arm. Claire failed to dodge the opponent's attack and was directly grabbed by the head. In a hurry, Claire, whose eyes were blocked by the palm of the hand, didn't care so much, and directly took the M16 assault rifle and kept pulling the trigger at the position of the long-handed monster in his memory. Dash, although there is only a 3-shot mode, Claire gave people the feeling of firing in full automatic mode, and in a few seconds, he directly emptied the last 5.56mm bullet magazine. The long-armed monster felt pain and instinctively let go of Claire. Claire, who fell to the ground, didn't care how painful her hips were now. She picked up the Calico M-100P pistol with both hands and shot at the monster in front of her. At this time, Steve also reacted. Claire in front of him was put down by the other party, and he could finally shoot back. After all, the long-armed monster didn't have a bulletproof straitjacket, and it was a degraded version. His self-repair ability was not as strong as other Tyrant-type biochemical weapons. He was beaten back by the joint attack of Claire and Steve. With a click, the bullets of the Calico M-100P pistol in Claire's right hand were used up, and the long-armed monster was accompanied by with a wail. He fell to the ground. Claire touched her head and felt a little pain, but there were no other symptoms. She couldn't help but feel lucky that she had just shot the monster in time to let her go. After dealing with the long-armed monster, Claire pulled Steve away quickly. She was worried that this monster, which was somewhat similar to the Tyrant, would also be resurrected and mutated to be more powerful. After escaping from the freight elevator, the two followed the instructions of the emergency escape device and walked forward. When they passed a corridor, the floor under their feet suddenly collapsed and fell to the lower floor. Claire wanted to get up, but found that her legs were pressed down and she couldn't move for a while. On the other side, Steve was very lucky. He fell far away and was not hit by the falling floor. Standing up, Steve was about to go up to rescue when he heard the howling of a zombie from the other side. Claire also saw the zombie, but she had thrown away her M16 assault rifle because she had no bullets, and the Calico M-100P pistol on her waist was lost during the fall, so Claire could only pick up the Beretta M93R pistol to aim and shoot. However, just as Claire was about to raise her gun to shoot, Steve suddenly blocked in front of Claire. "What are you doing?" Claire had a weapon in her hand, so she couldn't understand why the other party blocked her gun. Steve didn't speak, and his hands holding the weapon were shaking slightly. "Steve." No matter how Claire called him, Steve was indifferent, just staring at the zombie in front of him. The zombies were approaching slowly, and Steve was also slowly backing away, with a complicated expression on his face, saying, "Father." "What?" Claire finally understood why Steve had such a reaction, but the zombie was only a few meters away from Steve. Bang! Clang! It was Claire who fired the gun, which directly hit the road roller beside him. Steve, who was a little stunned, was awakened. As if he wanted to get courage from Claire, he looked back at Claire, and then fired several shots to deal with the zombies that had already pounced in front of him. Steve looked at the fallen zombie, turned his head, held back his tears, and helped Claire move the floorboard that was pressing on his legs. "Steve, thank you for saving me." Claire sat on the ground and did not stand up rashly. She knew how difficult it was to shoot her relatives. Steve, who rescued Claire, also sat on the ground, turned his head, hiding his current expression, and then seemed to want to release his emotions. Steve slowly told his experience. It turns out that the burden Steve mentioned in the prison management room before was his father. As a small employee of Umbrella, his father was arrested by Umbrella for betraying the company's information, and Steve's mother was brutally killed during the arrest. Claire felt sympathy when she learned about Steve's tragic experience. When she was about to comfort Steve, Steve suddenly stood up, found a piece of linen, and covered his father. Claire found that the boy in front of her had grown up when he stood up. Steve gently stroked his father's body. At this time, he finally untied the knot that had been buried in his heart. Then he wiped his tears and turned to Claire, who had checked her feet and was standing up carefully, and said, "I should thank you, Claire." Claire tilted her head. She didn't know why Steve thanked her. Seeing Claire, who had always been heroic, rarely showed her lovely side, Steve smiled and secretly vowed to protect Claire and take her out of this hell. Why are there so many new jobs appearing near the holiday meow? More, go to eat meow. O, equals mathematical intersection symbol omega mathematical intersection symbol equals M. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 75. Chapter 74. Four people gather together and target the Antarctic base. When Claire were about to face the long-handed monster, the bombed airport on Lotford Island welcomed two uninvited guests. Chris and Jill arrived on Lotford Island via a plane. Although Gil kept running around and fighting during the Raccoon City incident, he didn't suffer any serious injuries, just scratches and the like. What makes Jill strange the most is that on the night of leaving Raccoon City, after doing that for the first time with Luo Guang, when he got up the next day, he found that his body did not feel any fatigue after strenuous exercise. The fatigue was gone, and the bruised front wounds were all healed. I even felt that my physical condition had improved a lot, and the skin problems caused by long-term insomnia were completely resolved. The problem of physical fatigue was resolved, and the nourishment of love allowed Jill to successfully get rid of the shadow of the mansion incident mentally. Therefore, Jill had to leave for Europe more than half a month earlier than in the biochemical game, just in time to leave Chris from safe house. Therefore, after receiving a letter from a man named Leon, Jill was added to the team that set out to rescue Claire. Gil also used his previous relationship with the Delta Force to rent a passenger plane and set up the autopilot based on the coordinates in Lion's email. This way, Chris finally didn't have to go around and switch to various means of transportation, and in the end had to climb Rocks Island. As for why the two of them landed at the island airport so openly, it was because all the fighter planes that attacked the island had already left, and the island was in such a mess that it seemed that no one would jump out to hinder their landing. "Where do you think your sister would go in this situation?" Jill first asked Chris if he had any suggestions. Jill didn't want to use the stupid method of searching all the places. "I don't know." Chris shook his head. He was not familiar with this place, so he couldn't give an answer. However, he already had an idea when he came to Lotford Island, so he suggested, "We have two kinds of choose and find a radio station that can call the whole island and broadcast directly." "Where's the other one?" Gil nodded. It was better to let the other person find him than to look around aimlessly. Chris pointed to the obvious castle in the center of the island and said, "Most other places on the island have traces of being bombed. I think that place is relatively strong. If Claire wants to avoid the attack, she may flee there." Jill nodded and agreed to Chris' plan, so the two of them held weapons and headed towards the castle. However, when the two were passing by the gate of the USS military training ground, they were stopped by a man. "Wesker, you are indeed alive." Seeing that Wicks, who was killed by the tyrant's claw in the mansion incident, was still alive, Chris didn't feel surprised at all, but he didn't expect that he would meet him here. "Go to your old captain." Wesker smiled when he saw the man in front of him, who worried him more and more. On the other side, when Jill saw Wesker in front of her, she couldn't help but think of what happened in the mansion a few months ago, and felt angry. Just when Gil was about to take a shot at Wesker, Wex took the lead. Wesker's first target was still Chris. A flying shot over his shoulder sent Chris flying directly, and he hit the giant worm corpse behind him that Luo Guang had dealt with before when he went to the monitoring room. Although there was a soft object behind him, Wesker still knocked Chris hard. At this time, Chris felt as if his body was about to fall apart. Jill quickly moved the pistol sideways, aimed at Wesker and fired, but Wesker continued to ignore Jill, dodged the first bullet, and rushed directly towards Chris. However, Gill's eyes and body reaction soon caught up with Wesker's speed, and he predicted the opponent's charging direction and fired. Several bullets hit Wesker, who was charging. But because of Wesker's bulletproof black trench coat, the 9mm bullet that hit did not cause any damage to Wesker. However, Wesker stopped because of these bullets and looked at Jill curiously. Jill didn't expect that your marksmanship and reflexes have improved so much. Wesker was familiar with Jill, so he said this. On the other side, Chris struggled to get up, but before he could figure out where Wesker's superhuman strength came from, Wesker, who charged again, grabbed his neck and lifted him up. On the way, Wesker was shot several more times by Jill. Although it did no harm to him, it was as annoying as a fly, so after Wesker lifted Chris, he turned around and used Chris as his shield. Chris's neck was stuck and he was unable to resist. He struggled desperately and slapped Wesker's sunglasses off, revealing his beast-like eyes. "Let go of Chris," Jill yelled. Wesker smiled and replied, "Jill, why are you saying such things? Do you think I will be obedient? I should have just said that, right? You are too kind. What do you want to do?" Gil looked around, hoping to find a way to break the situation. Wesker liked the feeling of having this kind of thing in his own hands. It made him feel excited about becoming a god. He said, "I don't want to do anything. I just think about how to send you to hell." Just when Wesker was enjoying the pleasure of strangling Chris to death at any time, Chris held his breath, took out the pistol from his waist, and fired 3 shots at Wesker, who was right in front of him. However, Wesker remained unmoved. The bullets could not penetrate the black trench coat on his body, and the opponent's body could withstand the subsequent blow. This chapter is not over. Please click on the next page to continue reading. Suddenly, another communication came from the communicator in Wesker's ear. It seemed that the person on the other side of the communicator was urging Wesker very angrily. Wesker looked unhappy, frowned, and turned off the communicator, muttering something about replacing you sooner or later. Just when Jill and the two didn't know what to do, the wall behind Wesker was directly smashed by some kind of monster, and the fragments of the wall directly hit Wesker's back. However, Wesker remained motionless. Just as he turned to look at the monster behind him, he was knocked away by a heavy punch from the monster. "Haha, I didn't expect that. Besides those low-quality goods, there are such things here." Wesker threw Chris away casually while being knocked away, then adjusted his body, landed safely, and said, "Chris, I want to go. The Umbrella base in Antarctica acquires a new virus. Come and stop me, if you haven't been eliminated by this tyrant." Wesker even thoughtfully told the two of them the coordinates of the Antarctic base. The reason why Wesker is so considerate and hopes that Chris will follow him is because Wesker enjoys the sense of accomplishment of Chris chasing after him and being one step behind him every time. He knew that when Chris knew that he was going to get the new virus, he would definitely chase him to the Antarctic. Once he got to the Antarctic, he would have plenty of time to deal with Chris, so he decided to let go of this interesting toy in front of him. After saying that, before Chris and Jill could speak, Wesker left directly and handed the two of them to the tyrant with the production number T-078 that Hank sent to the island. This T-078 tyrant was originally shipped from the Tyrant factory on Sheena Island to serve as a training partner for the newly recruited USS troops on Lotford Island. This T-078 Tyrant is a reduced version of the Tyrant that Umbrella cultivated through cloning after the development of the T-103 Tyrant. Researchers on Sheena Island even used it to develop the Sleeping Tyrant in order to save money. These T-078 Tyrants are not even equipped with bondage coats, so that they have some characteristics of super tyrants, such as growing claws. However, the Tyrant's claws that were transported to Lotford Island to serve as a training partner for the USS troops were specially treated, and his hands became like meat hammers, and his corresponding combat effectiveness was greatly reduced. Tyrant Chris was still on the ground at this time, gasping for air, so Jill could only temporarily lure the Tyrant away. But this time is no different than when in Raccoon City. Gil, who was fully armed, came well prepared. Gil didn't know that the black windbreaker on Wesker was bulletproof, so in order to hide his attack intention, he didn't take out the ACM assault rifle behind him when he attacked Wesker before. Facing the Tyrant at this time, it happened to be the occasion to use 7.62mm bullets. Gil was about to shoot, but someone beat him to it. "Brother," Claire ran out from the military training center nearby. When she saw the situation in front of her, she didn't care about it and just shot the Tyrant directly. Elder brother Steve, who was following Claire, saw the man lying on the ground in the field and thought to himself, "Is the man lying on the ground my future brother-in-law? Why does he look so frustrated? That's the biochemical weapons Tyrant from Umbrella. Be careful not to get hit." Jill didn't know that Claire was also in Raccoon City at the time, so she reminded him. Claire naturally understood what the monster in front of her was and had been waiting for it for a long time. Only Steve beside him still looked confused. But seeing everyone's serious looks, Steve still understood that the monster in front of him was difficult to deal with, and he started shooting. However, to the surprise of the 4 people present, this Tyrant turned out to be a tough target. The 4 of them cooperated in pairs and kept pulling. Finally, they only spent a few bullets and knocked down the T-078 Tyrant. Then everyone changed places to exchange information. Steve met the Tyrant for the first time and said, "It feels like it only consumes more bullets than the long-handed monster that caught you, Claire, before." Claire was also surprised. She scratched her head and said, "When I was in Raccoon City, the Tyrant I met was very powerful, and I chased him from beginning to end." Jill also had this experience and couldn't help but nod in agreement. Steve was about to reply, but was interrupted by Chris, who had his hands on his hips. "Wait, Claire, you went to Raccoon City?" "Yes, I called, sent emails, and contacted you in various ways, but you didn't respond, so I went to the city where you work to find you." Although Chris looked nervous, Claire was calm. Replied. Looking at her nervous brother, Claire smiled and said, "I'm fine, don't be so nervous." "And brother, you're fine, that's great." After speaking, Claire took the initiative to greet her brother and gave her brother a big hug. "Okay, let's get out of here quickly. First, take Claire and Claire's friend to a safe place." Although the meeting between the brother and sister was touching, Jill still felt that since she had saved someone, she should run away as soon as possible. "My name is Steve Burnside. I'm a prisoner here. I was rescued several times by Claire." Steve squirmed sheepishly, as if meeting his parents. Chris stared at Steve, seeming to confirm something, but Claire was unhappy and stood in front of Steve and said, "Brother, why are you staring at my friend?" "Nothing." Chris scratched his head and said, "The prisoner means he was captured by Umbrella Company and trapped here. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading." Steve, who was embarrassed to be stared at, realized that Chris had been staring at him because he said the word prisoner, and he quickly said, "Yes, because what my dad did harmed the interests of Umbrella Company." "I see, I misunderstood, I'm sorry." Chris thought for a while, thinking that the other party's father was also an anti-biochemistry type of person, and said apologetically, "Okay, let's leave quickly," Jill urged, "there will be plenty of time later." "Yes, Jill, please take them away as soon as possible," Chris said quickly. Claire heard what Chris said and said anxiously, "Wait, brother, where are you? There should be other means of transportation here." "I'm going to chase Wesker," Chris said after confirming that his body could move normally. Jill didn't try to persuade Chris. She understood that Chris' decision could not be reversed even with 3 cows. But Claire quit and said, "No, I want to go too." "I'll go too," Steve quickly followed Claire's words. Chris quickly said, "No, Wesker is too dangerous. Your brother is no match for him. Didn't you see my miserable state when you came? That's Wesker's good deeds." After hearing what Chris said, Claire thought about it and said, "But a man I met on the island was not injured after fighting Wesker. By the way, although he is an employee of Umbrella, he is a good person." It was because Luo Guang seemed so relaxed at that time that even though the other party warned him that Wesker was dangerous, he didn't take it seriously, and later he forgot that there was such a dangerous person on the island. "His name isn't Luo Guang, is it?" Jill had a premonition in her heart. Claire was surprised. "Jill, do you know Luo Guang?" Jill said a little embarrassedly, "He is my boyfriend." "What?" It was Chris who made a surprised sound, because after the two met in Europe, Jill didn't tell him that she had a boyfriend. Jill glared at Chris. "What do you mean by this reaction? Is it weird that I have a boyfriend?" After speaking, Gil brought the topic back to business and asked, "Where did Luo Guang go?" Claire first briefly explained what happened before, and then said, "We don't know where Luo Guang went after that, and the radio intercom didn't contact him." After listening to this, Gil felt that he had also encountered this kind of situation when he was operating with Luo Guang in Raccoon City. Luo Guang would occasionally leave the team and act alone, without saying anything in advance, which kept him worried. Then Gil wanted to call the number on Luo Guang Naji's mobile phone, but his mobile phone showed no signal at this time. "Why don't we divide our troops into several groups?" Steve, who had been listening to everyone talking, suggested when he saw this. Before Steve could reveal his plan, Claire hurriedly said, "I'm going to the Antarctic with Chris to stop Umbrella's conspiracy. Then I'll go too, and I'll avenge them for killing my parents." Steve quickly expressed his intention to go too. Jill thought for a while and then said, "I will go to Antarctica too." "Jill," Claire asked, "but Luo Guang him?" Gil shook his head and said, "I believe him." Chris nodded on the side and said, "Then let's set off to Antarctica quickly." "Claire, follow me then." Okay, Claire was obedient, and Steve on the side actively raised his hand to express that he would help Chris protect Claire. The few people returned to the plane that Jill and the two took when they came over. The pilot was naturally Chris, who had served in the Lighthouse Air Force. Jill sat in the passenger seat, while Claire and Steve sat in the passenger compartment behind the cab. "Really? Are you not looking for your boyfriend on the island?" Chris asked Jill while confirming whether there was enough fuel for a round trip to Antarctica. Jill, who was checking other conditions on the plane, stopped when she heard Chris' words. Taking a deep breath, Gil glanced at the burning building outside the plane, and then said slowly, "Luo Guang's life is very lucky. When he was in Raccoon City, he would disappear occasionally, and then he would disappear when I fell into it. Show up in times of trouble. So again, I believe Luo Guang. Surrounded by zombie dogs, attacked by the giant furies, the death tyrant, etc., when he gets into trouble, Luo Guang will always appear in front of him and solve the problem with him," Gil thought. "I understand," Chris nodded, understanding Jill's determination. Chris was not familiar with relationships. When he asked this, he didn't really see that Gil was worried about Luo Guang. It was just that he needed a determined comrade to help him fight Wesker, so he reconfirmed Gil's determination. Not long after, the plane successfully took off and headed for Antarctica. At this time, there were only Claire and Steve in the back seat. Looking at Claire, who was about to fall asleep due to exhaustion, Steve slowly approached Claire's face. Asterisk. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 76. Chapter 75. Why sleep so long when you are alive? You will sleep forever after you die. Back to Luo Guang. After waiting for the anti-B.O.W linear particle blaster to finish charging, Luo Guang immediately set out to trouble Alexia. This secret room is accessed by an elevator, and the elevator can be used directly from the darkroom, so Luo Guang doesn't need to do any decryption. The elevator moved all the way down, and after it stopped, Luo Guang walked out of the elevator. The decoration style here is very similar to that of the mansion on Lotford Island. Luo Guang looked around and thought so. Unexpectedly, he got the anti-B.O.W linear particle blaster, which is also one of the most powerful weapons in the game series. Luo Guang decided to speed up and shoot Alexia before she woke up. Alexia is very smart, but her brother is not so good, and perhaps because he is a clone, Alfred's mental state has a big problem, which allows him to seize the opportunity. One wrong step, then another. Alexia placed her safety on Alfred, which led to today's situation. Luo Guang's luck was surprisingly good today. He soon found Alfred's office in the Antarctic family mansion and saw the crystal ball that could wake up Alexia. Luo Guang was worried that he would accidentally break the crystal ball and trigger the mechanism, so the first thing he did was to put the crystal ball in a drawer, then turned around and swiped his card to unlock the computer on the desk, and soon found the map of the Antarctic Research Institute base. The 2 floors below the mansion are where Alexia is. Luo Guang confirmed the route. There is an elevator in the mansion that can go directly to the door there. It's near the hidden elevator in the secret room. Seeing this, Luo Guang realized that he had taken a lot of detours. But it's true, after all, this anti-B.O.W linear particle impact cannon is aimed at Alexia. And when the other party escapes from this icy and snowy place, this anti-B.O.W linear particle impact cannon may not be able to deal with Alexia, so it will be set near Alexia. Luo Guang thought, after packing the data on Alfred's computer with the data copier given by Organization X, he cleaned up the data on the computer and set off for Alexia's location. The mansion was very quiet, without even a single infected zombie, as if Alfred had intentionally kept those dirty virus-infected creatures out. Using the highest level ID card on Alfred's body to successfully open the door, Luo Guang walked into the place where Alexia was sleeping. As soon as Luo Guang entered, the originally dark room suddenly became bright, and Luo Guang quickly raised the anti-B.O.W linear particle impact cannon in his hand to guard against sneak attacks. As the lights came on, all the electronic equipment surrounding the freezer in the center of the room also lit up. Thinking that he had fallen into Alexia's backhand set up to prevent his stupid brother from being unable to protect himself, Luo Guang aimed at the freezer. However, nothing happened, which made Luo Guang relieved. He really didn't expect that Alexia, like in the game, didn't leave any backhands for him. Luo Guang walked straight over and wiped the dust off the freezer glass with his hand. So beautiful. Luo Guang, who had seen countless movies, couldn't help but admire Alexia in the freezer. Her flawless white skin and beautiful facial features, although she was naked, gave people a sacred and inviolable feeling, which made people have no evil thoughts. Like Sleeping Beauty, her eyes were closed and her expression was very calm. Unfortunately, the 2 of them had different positions, and Alexia's high IQ made Luo Guang very afraid. In addition, although the other party was not perfectly integrated at this time, she was also highly integrated with the T. Veronica virus. Alexia had reached the same Emperor level as himself, so Luo Guang didn't dare to use his ability to take her in as a younger brother, unless he had a way to turn her into an absolutely loyal tool. Of course, there was another small reason: what if Jill got jealous after seeing Alexia following him? Thinking so, Luo Guang took out the camera he had used in the Secret Research Institute in Danforth City before, and took pictures. After taking the portrait of Alexia, Luo Guang took Alfred's ID card and walked to the computer to unlock it. Alexia still has 4 to 5 days left before she can be perfectly integrated. Luo Guang's first thing was to confirm Alexia's awakening time. There were still about 5 days left, so he had plenty of time now. Luo Guang glanced at the 2 fully charged anti-B.O.W linear particle impact cannons placed beside him, plugged in the data copier, and continued to operate the computer to selectively copy the data inside, and then called up the monitoring page. The first one he looked at was the monitor of the Antarctic base. It seems that Wesker and his organization have also discovered this place. Luo Guang saw that the upper floors of the Antarctic Research Institute base had biological and chemical weapons that he had not seen when he came here. Most importantly, Luo Guang saw that those biological and chemical weapons were all moving to the lower floors under the leadership of a small 4-legged robot. Wesker should still be on the way, because Luo Guang did not see Wesker in the monitoring, so he judged so. Switching to the surveillance footage of Lotford Island, Luo Guang wanted to look for Claire and the others, but unfortunately no trace of them was detected in any of the surveillance footage on the entire island. Did they escape? Luo Guang's first reaction was that Claire and Steve had successfully escaped from Rothford Island, just like the plot in the game. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. But Luo Guang didn't know whether what happened on the island would affect Claire and Steve. For example, they left by ship at the port. Thinking of this, Luo Guang switched the surveillance to the port on the island again, but found that the ship was still there. Luo Guang recalled the plot of Codename Veronica, and thought that they would not follow to the Antarctic base. At this time, Luo Guang didn't know that because Jill arrived in Europe in advance, Chris arrived at Rothford Island earlier than in the game, so that the protagonists met directly on the island. After confirming that Wesker and Claire had not arrived, while waiting for the data to be copied, Luo Guang was not idle. The first thing he did was to use the permissions of the computer here to delete and close all the surveillance videos on Rothford Island. The second thing was to delete all the surveillance videos of the Antarctic base, then turn off the video retention function of the surveillance, and then use the camera to monitor the biological and chemical weapons while operating the doors and mechanisms of the Antarctic base to start causing trouble for the biological and chemical weapons that were transported. Although this would let Wesker, who came later, know that there were other people in the Antarctic base, Luo Guang was not afraid of Wesker at this time, and was eager to fight with him again. So the main purpose of Luo Guang's doing this was to delay time as much as possible so that he could deal with Alexia before Wesker arrived. After all, his goal was not as simple as dealing with Alexia. Ding, the data copier sent a prompt that the data copying had been completed. Luo Guang put away the data copier, and after getting ready, he picked up the anti-B.O.W linear particle blaster and walked to the door of this room. In the introduction of the anti-B.O.W linear particle blaster, it was mentioned that this weapon would spread a spherical electric light circle after hitting an enemy that could not be penetrated, so Luo Guang needed to stay away from it. This was also the reason why he copied the data before taking action, and it could also prevent the electric light from damaging his electronic equipment. He carried the weapon on his shoulder, used the electronic sight on it to lock onto the Sleeping Beauty Alexia, and pulled the trigger without hesitation. The anti-B.O.W linear particle impact cannon began to emit a blue light in front of the muzzle. Luo Guang did not feel any recoil. A blue light rushed out of the muzzle and shot directly at the freezer. Slightly more exaggerated than the performance in the game, this blue particle beam went directly through the freezer, hit the electronic equipment behind it, and then punched a hole in the wall. Affected by the particle beam, all the electronic equipment around the wall with a hole in it was paralyzed, but the monitoring computer that Luo Guang had used before on the other side was still usable. This anti-B.O.W linear particle impact cannon can choose multiple firepower levels after charging. After charging once, it can fire 1 to 3 rounds respectively, and Luo Guang naturally chose the one with the highest firepower. Luo Guang threw away the anti-B.O.W linear particle impact cannon that had no energy, ran to the freezer, and picked up Alexia, who was left above the shoulders. Just as Luo Guang expected, The cannon aimed at the opponent's abdomen left Alexia with the most important brain, and the other naked parts were all harmonized. Even so, Alexia did not die. The T. Veronica virus began to repair her body the moment she was severely injured. However, this world is not a game, so Alexia still has to respect the law of energy conservation. Her body did not undergo a giant mutation. The T. Veronica virus simply sealed the injured area and generated a small heart and breathing ability with skin breathing. The high temperature of the particle beam directly released Alexia from the frozen sleep state, but Alexia, who had just woken up, was shocked by the current situation. No wonder Alexia was like this. As soon as she woke up and opened her eyes, she found that most of her body was gone, and she was hugged by a strange man with a strong chest. "Who are you?" Because her lungs were directly destroyed, Alexia could only ask in horror after the T. Veronica virus repaired Alexia's speaking function. "Alexia, ever since you disappeared from college, I have been looking for you, my goddess." Luo Guang hugged Alexia tightly, so she could not see Luo Guang's expression, but she could hear the sadness and excitement in Luo Guang's tone. However, as the child psychology researchers invited by Alexander have studied, the genius Alexia was too early to bear the knowledge beyond her age when her three views were not formed, and the people around her had excessive expectations of her, which made Alexia have a great gap and indifference to everything around her, and showed arrogance and paranoia. Only Alfred, who was born as a clone like herself, could give Alexia a little comfort. So Alexia did not understand what Luo Guang said at all, and struggled to get out of Luo Guang's arms. Luo Guang continued, "The man named Alfred actually wanted to stop me from seeing you, so I got rid of him." What, if there is anything else in the world that Alexia thinks is more important, it is that only her stupid brother is left. After hearing what Luo Guang said, Alexia was furious. She wanted to mobilize the T. Veronica virus in her body to obtain weapons such as claws to directly disembowel the man in front of her, but she found that the virus in her body did not obey her instructions. Even when she used her supersensory perception ability to call the T. Veronica infected creature prepared in advance, that is, the monster Nosferatu that her father turned into, she did not get a response. "Why? Why can't I use my ability?" The angry Alexia even used her teeth, but she couldn't bite through Luo Guang's skin, and she felt that the more she struggled, the weaker her body became. "Even if you are a genius child, you still don't know what you don't know." Luo Guang no longer teased Alexia. He had been talking nonsense and angering the other party before, just to try to make the other party notice his little movements later, so that he could prepare to completely control the other party. At this time, Luo Guang was activating his own ability to assimilate similar tissues, constantly absorbing Alexia's flesh and blood, of course, including the T. Veronica virus in the other party's body. After all, Alexia has not yet completely integrated the T. Veronica virus, so Luo Guang found after testing that there is a gap between emperors. Although he cannot control the other party, he can suppress the other party's virus ability. Of course, the instinct of survival allows the T. Veronica virus to repair Alexia's body uncontrollably and keep her alive, but it will not work if it wants to change the body structure or use burning blood. "I am a god who is about to descend into this world. How can I fall here?" Alexia was very scared. She herself did not learn much about fighting. After losing her virus ability, she could not stop the bullets no matter how smart she was, not to mention the attack of Luo Guang who was close at hand. Anyway, it would take some time to absorb the other party with the skin alone, so Luo Guang started chatting with the other party, a god who has been sleeping for 15 years. "Alexia, I don't understand why you think this is a good plan. You have such a high IQ. With your means and the size of Umbrella, it is only a matter of time for you to dominate the world." "Are you talking about dominating this boring and twisted world?" Alexia saw that she couldn't resist, so she could only speak quickly. "You boring idiots only look at me, a genius, with colored eyes. In addition to the flash of the media when I was in college, there were also the eyes of those around me who looked at me like a monster. Even my father only used me as a tool to revitalize the family. Although Alexia was very angry, her tone gradually weakened. It doesn't matter if this world doesn't exist. I want to create my own world and become the god who dominates the new world. God, Luo Guang didn't believe in ghosts and gods. Hearing Alexia's words, he couldn't help but think that this genius was just a willful child who hadn't grown up. It's just that unlike other ordinary children's fantasies, Alexia has the ability to turn her fantasies into reality. Alexia, it's almost time, your dream should end. Luo Guang realized that the T Veronica virus in the other party's body had been basically absorbed. Without the support of the virus, the little heart could not supply enough blood and oxygen to Alexia's brain. Alexia did not answer Luo Guang's words. After 15 years of sleep, she woke up for less than half an hour and fell into a long sleep this time. I feel that it is more in line with the identity of a time traveler to get the particle impact cannon and kill Alexia before she wakes up. Meow. Asterisk. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 78. Chapter 76, Fight Wesker Again. The absorption of the T Veronica virus, mutated version of Alexia, has been completed, and the analysis has begun. After the absorption is completed, the system begins to report. The T Veronica virus in Alexia's body has undergone a unique mutation in her body. Because of the high degree of fusion, the virus will automatically choose the evolutionary direction suitable for the host, so Alexia's evolutionary direction is different from Luo Guang's, which makes it possible for Luo Guang to learn new abilities. Therefore, Luo Guang chose to leave part of Alexia's torso. In addition to allowing the energy in Alexia's body, which had just awakened, to be directly used to repair the body, it was for the T Veronica virus in her body. This was something Luo Guang wanted to test after obtaining the ability to assimilate tissues. However, for Luo Guang, only people, organisms, whose degree of fusion with the T Veronica virus and the host has reached a high degree of fusion or above, and whose hosts can independently control the virus, have the value of absorption and fusion, otherwise they can only be used as energy cans. Although it is called energy cans, Luo Guang does not want to eat the flesh and blood of those monsters, and the efficiency of skin absorption is not high, so it is more convenient to eat energy bars directly. Alexia in Luo Guang's arms has turned into ashes, which is useless matter that Luo Guang cannot absorb. A new mutation direction has been selected. Luo Guang had just put on his clothes when the system finished analyzing and displayed the mutation direction content in front of Luo Guang. Hardened armor. The adapter can create a set of armor outside the body that can withstand small bullets. The form of the armor can be chosen by the adapter. After the manufacture is completed, it can be integrated and hidden in the bottom layer of the skin. The first manufacture of hardened armor requires a lot of energy, so the adapter should prepare energy reserves in advance. At the same time, the hardened armor is very easy to ignite. Although it has an automatic shedding function, the adapter should pay attention to the timing of use. Because the virus in Alexia's body is the same as the virus that Alfred gave Luo Guang before, the basis is T Veronica virus, so the mutation direction given this time is more developed by the virus according to Alexia's own characteristics and needs. From the introduction of this hardened armor, the system speculated that this might be the ability that Alexia had subconsciously commanded the evolution of the virus in her body when she woke up without clothes. Luo Guang clicked on a folded page, which contained the mutation directions that were pre-screened according to Luo Guang's system settings. Among them, there was the ability to become a giant queen ant, which allowed the adapter to give birth to various virus-fighting creatures, and the ability to grow 2 pairs of membranous wings behind the adapter, which allowed the adapter to fly. Luo Guang still wanted the ability to fly, but considering the existence of firearms, Luo Guang felt that the use of this flying ability was not as great as he imagined, and the durability of the membranous wings was not good, and he had no defense measures when falling from the air. So even if this pair of membranous wings could be hidden in the body, he would not choose this ability. After all, he did not want to try the terrifying power of gravity. It was a pity that this hardened armor was not fireproof, otherwise Luo Guang would have considered wearing it directly as clothes. Luo Guang sorted out his clothes, ate some high-energy chocolate that was always available in his backpack, and then began to try to make hardened armor. Luo Guang had no idea about the style of hardened armor for the time being, so he made a bulletproof vest that could protect the torso between the clothes and the body according to the appearance of the lining. Next is the armor on the palm part. Luo Guang made it in the form of fingerless gloves to ensure the feel of pulling the trigger of the gun. Although this ability is called hardened armor, it does not mean that Luo Guang cannot add some materials to the hardened armor, such as adding some quadrangular pyramid spikes to the phalanges between the metacarpophalangeal joint and the proximal interphalangeal joint to enhance the power of boxing, and even directly make weapons such as daggers. In order to ensure the flexibility of his actions, Luo Guang made the armor on other parts of his body into individual pieces. After eating several chocolate bars, Luo Guang finally made the armor while ensuring sufficient energy, and integrated most of the armor into his body. Although it was only integrated into the bottom layer of the skin, it did not seem to affect the bulletproof ability of the hardened armor. After doing all this, Luo Guang came to the electronic equipment by the door, where there was also a fully charged anti-B.O.W linear particle impact cannon. Luo Guang found the design drawings of the anti-B.O.W linear particle blaster and the matching charging equipment design drawings in the secret room left by Alexander Yossiford, but Luo Guang did not copy them, but relied on his memory and the system's recording ability to copy them into his brain. Compared with the virus, Luo Guang attaches more importance to the technical confidentiality and preservation of this weapon, so he will not hand over this weapon to the X organization. Thinking of this in his heart, Luo Guang released the energy of the anti-B.O.W linear particle blaster, dismantled the weapon with his bare hands, destroyed all the parts by hand, and then threw them into the freezer and paralyzed electronic equipment respectively. This Antarctic base has a self-destruct system, but Luo Guang is worried that Claire and others will fly into the Antarctic base by plane as soon as he turns on the self-destruct system, so he decided to be safe and let the Antarctic base receive all its destined guests before starting the self-destruct program. Then Luo Guang searched the nearby rooms again and successfully found a built-in refrigerator, and found 3 samples of the T. Veronica virus in it. Luo Guang happened to think of the ability of the T. Veronica virus to control the class, so he confirmed the feasibility of a plan with the system. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. With the help of the system, Luo Guang created the special version of the T. Veronica virus he wanted, and then drew some blood from himself and put the samples in the protective layer of his backpack. After a long rest, Luo Guang looked at the surveillance of various places in the Antarctic base displayed on the screen beside him. Finally, he waited for the person he was waiting for, so he immediately got up and set off. Wesker, who arrived at the Antarctic base earlier than Claire and others, had received a report that there were other people in the Antarctic base and blocked the advance of the biological and chemical weapons troops. The intelligence analyst of the mysterious organization to which Wesker belonged believed that it was controlled by people from Umbrella Company, and it was very likely Alfred who left Lotford Island. Wesker didn't care much about this. The only things he cared about now were Chris and the Umbrella employee he met in the garden in front of the mansion. "Did you find out the information about the person I met on the island who could fight me?" Wesker asked. Because Wesker didn't like the feeling of being monitored, he didn't carry the video recorder of his organization, so the intelligence analyst could only look for clues based on Wesker's description. However, Luo Guang's Asian face allowed the organization's intelligence analysts to narrow the search scope, so the intelligence analyst replied, "There are several people who fit your appearance. Some of them are guards on the island, and one is Luo Guang, a senior intelligence officer of Umbrella's Chicago branch in America. He was recently transferred to work in the European branch, and then sent to Lotford Island to receive anti-biological and chemical weapons training with the USS personnel. It seems to be in preparation for the next mission, but we haven't collected any information about that mission yet. From your tone, it may be the latter. Wesker saw that the other party described the latter's information in such detail, and he understood what the other party meant. I understand. Is there anything strange about his resume? Nothing strange, but he is a survivor of Raccoon City, the intelligence analyst replied. Wesker wondered if Luo Guang was also an adapter who could coexist with the T-virus, and said, I understand, keep an eye on it. Wait, someone is destroying our biological weapons. Wesker was about to cut off the communication when he heard the intelligence analyst exclaim, the enemy is very fast, and all of them are one-shot kills. Where is the enemy? I'll go meet him, Wesker asked with a smile on his face. The enemy is advancing upwards, and is already the same as you. The intelligence analyst's anxious words had not yet been finished, and Wesker had already seen the enemy. Luo Guang saw Wesker and stopped. At this time, he was wearing a black mask made of hardened armor to cover his appearance. However, although Luo Guang covered his appearance, he still did not change his clothes, so Wesker also made a judgment in his heart and understood who the other party was. I didn't expect that we would meet again so soon, Luo Guang. Although Wesker felt that it was more likely that senior intelligence officer Luo Guang was the enemy he had met before, he still tried to test it. Hearing Wesker calling his name, Luo Guang did not react. Instead, he tilted his head, emphasized the word act, and asked, who are you? But Wesker did not follow Luo Guang's words. After muttering a trick, Wesker rushed directly towards Luo Guang and threw a collapsing fist. However, Luo Guang at this time was different from the day before. He directly grabbed Wesker's fist. What? Luo Guang had avoided the attack before and chose to grab his wrist, but this time he directly grabbed his fist, which surprised Wesker. The finger bones of Wesker who was held made a cracking sound. Luo Guang pulled Wesker to his side, and tried a half-step collapsing fist with his other hand. Of course, Luo Guang's half-step collapsing fist was just for show. He learned it from movies and videos. Luo Guang did not know how to exert force and coordinate the muscles in his body, but fortunately, he had the assistance of the system, which made this collapsing fist have a good effect. Wesker saw that the opponent's strength had become so strong that he could directly grab his hand, so he did not dare to treat Luo Guang with the same standard as last time. He resisted the opponent's attack and turned his palm to block Luo Guang's punch to protect his liver. It was stronger than Wesker expected, but Wesker's blocking and pushing could only buy some time for himself to dodge sideways, which made Luo Guang's punch just pass his body. However, the gloves on Luo Guang's hands were spiked, which directly pierced Wesker's palm, and blood flowed onto Luo Guang's fist. Wesker felt bad after just one round of fighting. It was not good for his situation, but he would not sit and wait for death. After the two of them got close, Wesker looked at the mask on Luo Guang's head and gave up the headbutt attack directly. He chose to raise his foot to give Luo Guang a knee. Luo Guang chose to ignore it, holding Wesker's hand and throwing it aside, which directly prevented Wesker's knee from hitting, and the following front kick also kicked crooked. Because the two were fighting in the corridor, Luo Guang's swing directly knocked Wesker into the wall of the corridor, leaving a human figure on the wall. Luo Guang took the initiative to let go and punched Wesker, who was stuck in the wall, and kept shouting "Ola Ola" and other words that Wesker couldn't understand. Wesker, who received Luo Guang's punch, understood that his internal organs, which had been transformed by the experimental progenitor virus and the G virus, modified, recovered from William's body, could not withstand Luo Guang's punch, so Wesker could only protect himself with his arms and try to protect the important parts of his body. After suffering from several consecutive punches and breaking his arms, Wesker seized the opportunity, attacked the middle, and kicked Luo Guang in the head. This chapter is not over. Please click on the next page to continue reading. Luo Guang stepped back habitually to avoid Wesker's kick. And Wesker wanted to take the opportunity to pull himself out of the wall, but his back had just left the wall and was hammered into the wall again by Luo Guang. After dozens of punches in a row, Wesker relied on the self-repair ability of the virus to barely support himself, and his heart was full of shock. It was only a day, and the gap between the two became so big, and the most important thing was that his previous advantage in agility against Luo Guang was gone. Wesker, who was lagging behind, put aside his pride and had to admit that he could not deal with Luo Guang at the moment. He began to think about how to get out of the current predicament. However, before Wesker could figure it out, the reinforcements from the organization behind him arrived first. The camera of the small quadruped robot moving along the wall saw the suppressed Wesker, and the operator behind it quickly changed a guide beam from blue to red and pointed it at Luo Guang. The Hunter 2 behind the quadruped robot received a specific signal and began to cross the quadruped robot and rush towards Luo Guang. Luo Guang licked the blood on the armor on his fist, punched Wesker again, and pulled out Wesker, who was about to be turned into a meat pie, and threw him directly at the hunters. Because Wesker was not irradiated by the red guide beam, the hunters directly avoided the thrown Wesker and rushed straight to Luo Guang. Luo Guang went up to meet him. He was not afraid of those monsters. He bent down to avoid the claws and threw an uppercut to directly raise the protruding head of the hunter who attacked him first. Not to mention how surprised the mysterious organization operator was at this moment, Wesker knew that Luo Guang would soon attack him again and beat him up. Although Wesker did not have enough information to analyze why Luo Guang did not smash his head like those hunters in the previous flurry of punches, he knew that if he beat Luo Guang again, the energy in his body would not be enough to support him to escape at a high speed, and then he would not be able to escape anymore. With the decision, Wesker immediately repaired his body quickly and turned to escape. Luo Guang solved the hunter with one punch, and those biological weapons could not stop Luo Guang's pursuit at all, rushing straight towards Wesker. Wesker, who looked back at the situation, also understood that his current speed was a little slower than Luo Guang. If he did not have other means, he would be caught up sooner or later. Wesker thought to himself, shook his sunglasses and threw them back, and threw his sunglasses directly in the direction of Luo Guang. Right in front of Luo Guang, the sunglasses suddenly exploded with a flash of light. Shit, Luo Guang cursed, his cornea was stimulated by the strong light, and he couldn't see clearly in front of him for a moment. But in a few seconds, the virus in Luo Guang's body was repaired, and Wesker was gone. Seeing this, Luo Guang didn't plan to chase him anymore. After all, Luo Guang deliberately didn't attack Wesker's head before, just to give him a chance to survive. Meow, there is another update tonight, but I have to go out for dinner tonight, so it may be updated later. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 79. Chapter 77 Ending. Although Wesker did not get the T. Veronica virus sample in this operation, Luo Guang believed that the humiliation he gave to the other party would make him work hard, and study various powerful viruses to strengthen Wesker himself, so Luo Guang temporarily spared Wesker's life. In the Resident Evil game, Luo Guang believed that if he was there, Wesker would not let the plot of capturing Jill for experiments happen. After all, Wesker is also a virology talent who has studied the Ouroboros virus. Although Luo Guang can fuse or compile various viruses, it can only be done in his own body, which is the credit of the system. If he is separated from the system and researched and developed outside, then Luo Guang can be said to know nothing. Of course, Luo Guang has also taken time to learn relevant virology knowledge recently, but compared with doing research and development by himself, compiling and improving directly in his own body is much more cost-effective. Luo Guang has a plan to establish his own power, but for the time being, there are too many forces in the world, and the cake and talents have been divided up almost, so Luo Guang doesn't know when he can establish it. As for the threat of Wesker becoming stronger in the future, Luo Guang said that he would not stand still and wait for Wesker to catch up. A long time ago, there was a saying that success requires friends and enemies. Luo Guang needed an enemy chasing him from behind to keep himself in a sense of urgency. Luo Guang did not chase Wesker, but it did not mean that Luo Guang would just stand there blindly. While thinking about the future, Luo Guang was also taking pictures of the Hunter 2 and the small quadruped robots. At the same time, he extracted the blood of the Hunter and took the important parts of the small quadruped robots, such as the guidance beam emitter and electronic chips. The organization behind Wesker, that is, the HCF organization, is said to be funded by the Tri-Union Company, but in the game, there is too little information about this organization. The biological weapons and robots developed by the HCF organization, together with the specially made T. Veronica virus samples, Luo Guang planned to use these things as a token of his loyalty and proposed to officially join the X organization instead of being an outsider. This can be regarded as an advance preparation and accumulation for his future power building. Although there is not much information about the X organization, Luo Guang believes that the T. Veronica virus will knock on their door. After all, becoming a god and delaying aging are quite tempting to those high-ranking people. After all, who doesn't want to be able to hold huge power all the time? And those T. Veronica viruses have been added with ingredients. As long as those high-ranking people use these virus samples, Luo Guang can control them to serve him unknowingly. Thinking of this, Luo Guang laughed alone. As for Umbrella, although Luo Guang deleted the videos of Rothford Island and the Antarctic base, he didn't know whether the videos of Rothford Island would be uploaded to Umbrella's network in real time. Therefore, he planned to disappear for a while before making plans. It would be best if the X organization could help him get intelligence directly. After Luo Guang cleaned up the scene, the biological weapons of the HCF organization appeared again, which made Luo Guang feel like his cat ran out to step on the plum blossom print after cleaning and mopping the floor. Of course, those biological weapons were not cute, so Luo Guang solved them like cutting melons and vegetables. After this battle, Luo Guang found that those Hunter IIS were all equipped with a combat recorder. In this way, Luo Guang had to think about his behavior after encountering these hunters, and whether the recorded things would have any impact on him. On Rothford Island, he had only encountered a hunter once, which was the first time Luo Guang and Claire separated. That time, there should be a video of him and Claire and others acting together, but Luo Guang also had a corresponding statement, just like what he said to Alfred before, just using them, so Luo Guang was not worried that the HCF organization would use this to threaten him. Since Wesker sneaked into Rothford Island, he should have a mission to steal the data on the island, so the other party should have a data storage device copied from Rothford Island. Luo Guang thought to himself and began to recall whether there was any different feeling when he beat Wesker before, as if there was a sound of a data hard drive or something being broken. Although it is not confirmed, it should not be a big problem. For the HCF organization, Wesker should not go to the island to copy those videos that are not known for what use, and now it is too late even if they go back to Rothford Island to copy the videos. After returning to the room where Alexia fell below the Antarctic base, Luo Guang continued to use surveillance to confirm the situation of the Antarctic base. Before waiting for Claire to come, Luo Guang also needed to make sure that Wesker had escaped from the base, not hiding somewhere. The method is very simple, that is, to use the pheromones attached to Wesker to track Wesker's escape path. The result is not bad. Wesker fled all the way to the airport of the Antarctic base, and then the pheromones broke the trace. Luo Guang nodded. Since the other party has admitted his weakness, he doesn't need to kill them all. If the other party still doesn't give up, Luo Guang will kill them. Temporarily safe, Luo Guang took off the hardened armor mask he was wearing and returned to the room below where Alexia fell to continue to use surveillance to confirm the situation of the Antarctic base at this time. Unexpectedly, the two sides just staggered. After Luo Guang returned to the monitoring room from the airport, he saw from the monitor that 4 people were carefully groping forward at the stairs in the cylindrical building. This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. Jill, Chris, Claire, and the brat Steve. Luo Guang did not expect that the lineup at the Antarctic research base was so luxurious, especially that Jill was there, which was beyond Luo Guang's expectations. Through the microphone next to the monitoring computer, Luo Guang broadcasted, "Hello, this is Luo Guang." Luo Guang saw from the monitoring that Jill and the others were startled by his sudden broadcast, and then Jill looked around, came to a surveillance camera and waved. Luo Guang controlled the surveillance camera to swing up and down, and confirmed the surveillance screen of the airport, and then said, "You came here by plane, right?" Jill nodded. "Great, I can't fly a plane, I don't know what to do if I'm trapped here." Luo Guang breathed a sigh of relief. Jill and his friends could fly a plane, so he didn't need to contact the X organization. Then Luo Guang continued, "The self-destruct system of this base has just been automatically turned on. It will self-destruct in about 10 minutes. You should prepare to take off quickly. I will come to meet you immediately." As Luo Guang spoke, the piercing alarm sounded. Hearing Luo Guang's words, Jill and Chris, especially, seemed to be stimulated by the word self-destruct system, and their faces changed. Jill nodded to the camera, and then immediately returned the same way, while Chris also stared at his sister, urging them to leave. After confirming that Jill and his friends had returned the same way, Luo Guang immediately ran away and joined Jill and his friends. After getting on the plane and taking off smoothly, Luo Guang smiled slightly and waved to Jill, "Jill, good." As Luo Guang greeted, Jill directly gave Luo Guang a small punch, and the Antarctic base behind the plane, which was getting smaller and smaller, also exploded violently at this time, burying everything. At this time, the 5 people gathered in the cockpit, and the atmosphere was a bit restrained and serious. When he came to Jill, Luo Guang gave Jill a loving hug directly, which made Chris and his sister, who were full of questions to ask Luo Guang, swallow their words. Steve, why did one of your eyes become a panda eye?" Luo Guang turned his head to look at Chris and the other 2, and immediately found the dark circles under Steve's left eye. "Don't mention it." Steve looked embarrassed, indicating that he didn't want to mention that matter, and Chris and Claire didn't say anything, looking around, and didn't seem to want to mention it. "I don't know what happened to them, and they won't tell me when I ask them." Jill was in the cockpit of the plane, watching the plane fly automatically, so she didn't know what happened when Chris went to talk to her sister. "Is it Steve that you wanted to do something bad to Claire, and then Claire beat you up?" Luo Guang thought of the plot in the game and guessed. Steve's face turned red, and Claire looked a little embarrassed and coughed. As for Chris, he clenched his fist again and raised it. When Steve saw Chris's posture, he immediately hid behind Luo Guang. "Haha, I understand what's going on." Luo Guang laughed. The serious atmosphere was swept away by Luo Guang's interruption. Chris sighed and stood up, saying, "Hello, Luo Guang. I am Chris Redfield, Claire's brother. Thank you for taking care of my sister." Before coming to the Antarctic base, Chris talked to his sister about what happened to Claire during this period, so he knew that Luo Guang cared about his sister. So Chris looked at Luo Guang, first introduced himself and expressed his gratitude to Luo Guang, and then started to talk about the topic and asked, "Are there only you, Luo Guang, and those monsters lying on the ground in the Antarctic base? Have you seen a man with sunglasses and a black windbreaker?" Because Luo Guang only told Claire that Wesker was on the island before, Claire did not see it with her own eyes, so in order to prevent people with the same name, Chris did not mention Wesker's name, but mentioned Wesker's iconic appearance and asked tentatively. Of course, this test was mainly because Chris couldn't figure out how Luo Guang could remain unscathed after fighting with Wesker. "You mean Albert Wesker? He ran away." Luo Guang directly said Wesker's full name. Luo Guang even said Wesker's full name, so Chris had to believe that Luo Guang had met Wesker. Run away? How did you do it? Chris wanted to know how to defeat Wesker, and asked anxiously. After thinking for a while, Luo Guang asked Chris to come to the cabin with him, and then said, "Hit me with all your strength, don't hit me in the face." Chris looked at Luo Guang, who looked a little thinner than himself, and looked back at Jill. Jill shrugged her shoulders. She also wanted to know how Luo Guang defeated the opponent, so she said, "Chris, just try it. If there is any problem, it is Luo Guang's fault." Okay. Since Jill, Luo Guang's girlfriend, said so, Chris didn't hesitate to punch Luo Guang directly, and then his hand hurt so much, while Luo Guang, with his hands behind his back, looked calm. "Your strength and resistance to fighting are too weak," Luo Guang explained. "Wesker moves very fast, so at least your reaction must keep up with the opponent's speed, and then you must not let Wesker knock him down with one punch, and finally give the opponent a fatal punch at the right time." "Luo, you don't look like a muscular man," Steve complained at the side. Luo Guang looked around. He didn't dare to practice on the wall of the plane, so he had to punch through the chair next to him that was stuffed with various soft materials. Then he looked at Steve and said, "I'm called sperm thin type." Chris and Steve both tried it, but the seats weren't fully fixed and adjustable, so they both failed. "This punch requires 10 years of skill," Luo Guang blew into his fist and said slowly. Chris looked at the chair that Luo Guang had penetrated and nodded thoughtfully. After Chris finished asking what he wanted to ask, he went to Claire's side. "Luo Guang, did you activate the self-destruction system in that Antarctic base?" "I think it was you who said the alarm started playing after the self-destruction system was activated," Claire said. Jill and Chris, who had experienced several biohazard incidents, both raised their hands in favor of blowing up the research base, so they did not raise any questions. Luo Guang also nodded frankly and admitted, "Because I want to destroy that ghost place." "But wouldn't it be better if we made it public? This is evidence that exposes the dark side of Umbrella." Claire put forward a different opinion. Luo Guang smiled bitterly and said, "Everything about Umbrella here has been destroyed long ago. Even if those reporters or others come here, they will only find evidence of the Sci-Fi family, but that family has been extinct. In the end, all the family members were taken care of by me. But the ancestor of the Sci-Fi family is one of the founders of Umbrella. The most important thing is that this can attract the attention of various countries, especially those biological and chemical weapons," Claire argued with reason. Claire didn't want the truth about the biological and chemical weapons in Raccoon City to be covered up, so she tried to use the evidence in the Antarctic base to get everyone to investigate Umbrella, and finally reveal the truth about Raccoon City. What does the family's affairs have to do with Umbrella? Moreover, a biochemical leak occurred here. When you came here, you also saw the zombies and hunters that I killed, right? If you bring those reporters here, can their safety be guaranteed? Are you sure that none of the people who came to verify the truth came here to obtain the virus? Are you not worried that someone will get the virus from here and spread it to the whole world?" Luo Guang kept asking Claire, and finally added the last question, "Also, Claire, do you think the Lighthouse government really doesn't know the truth about Raccoon City? Why do you want to expose the conspiracy here?" Hearing Luo Guang's words, Claire was in a dilemma. At this time, Chris came out to smooth things over and said, "Claire, I understand what you think, but we don't have the ability to deal with those things now, so it is better to clean up these biochemical viruses first. We cannot afford a virus leak." Jill also agreed with Chris, and she felt that she alone could not stop the officials from various countries who came after hearing the news. It was indeed very possible that Umbrella had not been defeated, but the virus technology had spread to the whole world first. Okay, Claire was unwilling, but the base was bombed, and after thinking about it, she found that she could not solve the problem raised by Luo Guang, so she could only sit on the chair in the cabin and sulk. As the youngest person here, Steve felt that he could not participate in this kind of thing. He had experienced how complicated and dark the adult world was, so at this time he played the role of a living treasure to accompany Claire. After Chris and Claire's problems were solved, everyone temporarily dispersed and rested. After 3 hours, everyone arrived at a country in Africa called Africa South. Meow. Asterisk. Double update. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 80. Chapter 78 Leniency for Confession. Africa is barely considered a relatively wealthy country in Africa. Taiwan Novel Network Rightward arrow. Internet payment is not well developed in this era, and cross-border payment by credit card is also troublesome, so Luo Guang habitually prepares a lot of money in his backpack. Originally, Luo Guang did not intend to let everyone down. Of course, the most important person was Jill, and the others were just incidental. So Luo Guang wanted to find a hotel in a relatively wealthy urban area, but Jill stopped Luo Guang later, and then led by Jill to a nearby hotel. The hotel was opened by a friend of Jill's former teammate, and the plane to Lotford Island was also rented to Jill by a friend of that friend, so Jill planned to repay a favor. By the way, everyone's pistols were successfully brought into the country, of course, with money to pave the way. As for the weapons bought by Jill and Chris, they were directly placed on the plane. At night, Luo Guang and Jill were in the same hotel room. The first thing was to use the scanner given by Wang Wei to confirm whether there were any surveillance and listening devices in the room. After confirming that it was safe, Luo Guang was not polite and pushed the door directly into the bathroom to play with water with Jill, who was taking a shower. After taking a shower, Jill and Luo Guang lay on the same bed. Jill leaned on Luo Guang's shoulder, and one hand slid restlessly on Luo Guang's body. Jill, I feel that your skin has improved, and it has not become dry after taking a shower. It is still so moist. Luo Guang looked at Jill's jade hands and said, and the calluses from your previous training are gone. Well, I think so too, and I didn't use those cosmetics, so I don't know what's going on. Luo Guang remembered that when he first met Jill, his skin was definitely not as good as it is now, but Jill didn't know, so Luo Guang didn't go into it any further. The two fell into a brief silence, silently feeling each other's warmth. But the silence did not last long. Jill stopped what she was doing, put her hand on Luo Guang's heart, and said slowly, "Can you tell me what happened when you and I separated?" Luo Guang felt that the current atmosphere seemed not suitable for talking about these things. Now. Is this a honey trap? Don't play tricks. I paid, and I'm serious. Jill pinched Luo Guang's waist and said with a pout. When Jill and himself were alone, she would occasionally show this kind of little girl's expression and action, which made Luo Guang feel novel and couldn't help laughing. Okay, Luo Guang began to tell Jill about what he had done since Lotford Island. Jill did not interrupt Luo Guang on the way. If there was any question, he just kept it in his heart for the time being and listened to Luo Guang's words quietly. So, Luo Guang, why did you chase that guy named Alfred? You should be able to kill him with one shot, because Luo Guang said that he deliberately let the water and shot the side. Jill asked this question. Jill chose her words a little before saying, "You are doing this as if you knew some special information in advance and concealed it." I do know some special information, and I didn't tell Claire and the others. Luo Guang admitted it directly, saying, I know the existence of the Antarctic base, but I don't know the specific coordinates, so I have to keep Alfred alive. As for why I didn't tell Claire and the others, and didn't contact them later, it's because... Luo Guang lowered his head slightly and looked at Jill, who looked up at him, thinking that Jill's eyes were really beautiful and her eyelashes were quite long. Jill didn't urge Luo Guang, but waited quietly for Luo Guang's answer, and didn't realize that Luo Guang was actually thinking about other things in his heart. I hid the Antarctic base because the Antarctic base is more dangerous than Lotford Island. Alfred's sister Alexia is sleeping there. After Luo Guang finished speaking, he explained to Jill about Alexia and why she fell into a deep sleep, and how he happened to solve the problem of Alexia, who was about to become a god. I understand. You are worried that the guy who wants to become a god will wake up early, so you choose to face it alone. Jill hugged Luo Guang tightly and whispered, "But isn't it too dangerous for you to do this alone?" Jill muttered that Luo Guang always did this, carrying too many things on him alone. Luo Guang heard Jill's muttering and realized that the other party misunderstood him, but Luo Guang did not correct him. After all, objectively speaking, he did take the risk alone. On the other hand, Jill didn't ask these questions because she doubted Luo Guang's position. It's just that the two haven't seen each other for several months, so she really wants to know what Luo Guang has been doing during this period, and wants to know some things that happened when Luo Guang was alone. In this way, the two can find a topic between them, instead of suddenly running out of topics and falling into silence like just now. The separation experience of about 2 months made Jill, who was in love for the first time, understand one thing, that is, things like distance, as well as common topics and circles, will have a great impact on the development of the relationship between two people. Jill, who cherished this relationship, couldn't help but worry when she was alone with Luo Guang that when Luo Guang was not around, he would be noticed by other women or would be in danger, etc. That's why Jill wanted to understand what happened during the time when Luo Guang and she were separated, learn about Luo Guang's circle, and find common topics, even if the topic was about biohazard, something that was not like ordinary couples talking about. This chapter is not over. Please click on the next page to continue reading. Luo Guang didn't understand Jill's little thoughts, but he felt that it didn't matter if he told Jill. There was just one thing that Luo Guang had been struggling with in his heart, whether to tell it or not, and that was Luo Guang's past and Wang Wei's matter. "Jill, there is something I want to tell you," Luo Guang suddenly spoke, causing Jill, who was about to share what happened to him in the past few months, to swallow his words. She heard the anxiety in Luo Guang's tone and asked with concern, "What's wrong?" "I seem to have lost my memory." Luo Guang changed to a more accurate statement, "Well, to be precise, my memory in the past has been deleted." When Gil heard Luo Guang's words, he sat up with his back exposed, turned to look at Luo Guang, and asked in surprise, "What do you mean?" "When I was working in Raccoon City, I seem to have been subjected to an amnestic and modification surgery by an umbrella researcher named Greg Mueller. Then when I was sent to the European branch, my previous relationship came to my door. Told me that I was actually a spy sent to Umbrella Company by their organization." Luo Guang briefly summarized it and told Jill about the organization Apocalypse. Of course, in the end, Luo Guang also specifically told Gil to keep his words tonight, especially the affairs of the Apocalypse organization, secret, not even to Chris and the others. "So from what they said, what kind of person were you before?" Jill nodded and said that she would keep it secret, and then asked a little curiously. Luo Guang replied, "I don't know, they didn't say much about those things. They just said that I was taken away from the orphanage by them, and then I continued to undergo various intelligence training in that organization until I reached adulthood, and then I was thrown to Amber, the Latin American branch's undercover." "Really? Then why are you so confused when you say this?" Gil felt that Luo Guang still had something to say, such as the fact that Luo Guang's personality before amnesia was not very good. After Luo Guang sighed, he said, "The problem lies with the person who came to the door. She and I graduated from the same training camp of the Apocalypse organization, and were also from the same orphanage." "She? Female? From the same orphanage, graduating from the same class." Jill suddenly understood and her voice became louder. "The sound insulation here is not good, Jill. Luo Guang did not say anything like calm down, but reminded Jill of the sound insulation problem here. Gil directly stepped over Luo Guang and sat on Luo Guang's waist. He lowered his voice and asked, "Then what? Are you guys and girls friends or husband and wife?" She didn't say it, but I saw that she didn't have a ring on her hand, so she probably wasn't married. But after all, she was also on an undercover mission, so it's normal not to wear a ring, right? Jill disagreed with Luo Guang's speculation. Luo Guang thought for a while and said, "But the other party has always wanted to awaken my memory. If it is really a relationship between husband and wife, the wedding ring should be a good medium, right? And I looked at the records of the apocalypse, and there is no mention of it. To my record of being married." Awakening memories, Gil wanted to know if Luo Guang had recovered his previous memories. It failed. She said there was a successful case. The person in Raccoon City recovered his memory after being stimulated. That's why it was said that the memory surgery can be restored through stimulation. Luo Guang didn't dare to say what the other party even wanted to do with love. To stimulate yourself. Although he successfully resisted the temptation, Luo Guang felt that if he said it, Gil would lose whatever sanity he had left. But Gil didn't give Luo Guang this chance. Jill kept staring at Luo Guang's eyes, and then said slowly, "You just said you recovered through stimulation, but the exciting situation in Raccoon City didn't allow you to recover your memory. What else can she use to stimulate you?" After all, Jill was a woman and she observed very carefully. She saw that Luo Guang's eyes wavered slightly when he talked about the recovery of stimulation, and he did not look directly at her for a moment. "She came to my room and wanted to do that kind of activity with me, but I couldn't bear to refuse." Seeing that he couldn't keep it secret, Luo Guang briefly explained the situation, and then explained that he rejected the other party. Jill asked, "In that case, why did you waver?" "Men, we were separated for a long time at that time. During this time, I had not released myself. So when the other party proposed this plan to restore memory, I wanted to agree for a moment." Luo Guang he had no experience, so he could only explain it honestly. Luo Guang glanced at Jill's expression, which seemed calmer than expected. After hearing Luo Guang's confession, Gil realized that the worry after the separation was not an illusion. That premonition actually came true here, and the situation became more serious. "I understand that men are lustful. It's already good that you can hold back, so I don't have anything to say on this matter." Gil first said that he believed what Luo Guang said, because it was easier for Luo Guang to make up any reason than to say that the other party wanted to do that with him, but Luo Guang still told the truth. Through spending time with Luo Guang, Jill discovered that Luo Guang rarely lied. Especially when talking to him, Luo Guang would either deliberately hide it or not, but would not lie if he did. Jill is now more entangled in one thing: is she considered a third party? "Thank you for your trust." Luo Guang was grateful to Jill for trusting him in this matter, but he didn't expect Jill to turn around and give Luo Guang a trump card. "Luo Guang, then am I considered a third party?" Luo Guang didn't dare to hesitate for such a life-threatening question, and directly denied Jill's statement, saying, "I told the other party that I already have a girlfriend now." This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. Luo Guang's words made Jill feel a little relieved, and Jill asked, "What did the other party say?" "She said she had fallen in love with me a long time ago." Luo Guang continued cautiously, "and she doesn't mind whether I have a girlfriend now." Jill found something from Luo Guang's retelling, such as the relationship between the other party and Luo Guang in the past may not be a boyfriend and girlfriend or a husband and wife relationship, but a relationship of unrequited love and secret love. As a woman, although Jill is only in love for the first time, from Luo Guang's words, the other party is likely to be in love for the first time, so Jill can understand the other party's thoughts a little bit. Put yourself in the other person's role. If you hear what Luo Guang said, you will probably say that you are Luo Guang's first girlfriend and they have not broken up, Jill thought so. Luo Guang saw Jill's thoughtful expression, which proved that Jill calmed down, and he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. What do you mean by your relieved expression? I'm so annoyed now. Jill was furious when he saw Luo Guang's expression. Luo Guang hugged Jill, and the two of them pressed together, feeling each other's heartbeat. No matter what, for me, my current girlfriend is Jill Valentine, Luo Guang said seriously. I don't have any feelings of love for her now. Then you may also recover your memory, then you. Jill didn't finish her words. Luo Guang kissed her, interrupting Jill's wild thoughts. After a while, Luo Guang reluctantly left Jill's moist lips and looked at Jill, who was slightly panting in front of him. I still say the same thing. My girlfriend now is you, Jill. Restoring memory does not mean that the memories between you and me have disappeared, and that will not change my love for you now. Luo Guang said this firmly. After all, he knew that the Luo Guang that Wang Wei knew was no longer there, and there was no memory to restore. Jill did not reply, but took the initiative to kiss him, and Luo Guang could no longer hold back and started the second round of battle. Meow, I asked an experienced person to write this chapter. If there is a coincidence, it is none of my business. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 81. Chapter 79, Going Their Separate Ways. Early the next morning, Gil rarely got up late. He looked at Luo Guang, who had woken up early, and looked at him, and asked, "What time is it now?" "About 10 o'clock in the morning. Chris came here before and sent me away." Chris came to knock on the door early this morning, intending to gather everyone to discuss the next plan, and then Luo Guang told Chris straightforwardly that the two of them "I been doing things for too long last night, and Jill hasn't gotten up yet." Then, Luo Guang looked at Chris, who looked confused at first and then flushed, said sorry to Luo Guang, and ran away quickly. Jill nodded, turned over, and stretched again, highlighting the beauty of her chest, and then said softly, "Is it my imagination? It feels like you last longer, and you did it too intensely last night. Come on. After all, I have been working out in the past few months, and we have been apart for a long time, so we have accumulated a lot." Luo Guang also found that the increase in endurance in his attributes seemed to also improve his endurance in that area. But what Luo Guang is more curious about is that Gil's physical strength can now keep up with his own pace. It was clear that Gil was still a little reluctant in the Maple Leaf Kingdom. Although it took a long time to do things, Jill did not feel any accumulation of fatigue after a late sleep. Instead, she became refreshed, so she did not stay in bed, got up, and started to wash up. However, in less than 7 minutes, Luo Guang and Jill finished washing and eating something, and then went to find Chris and the others. At this time, Claire was facing the sun, lying on a beach chair nearby, basking in the sun and enjoying the leisurely atmosphere. And Chris was exercising with a bucket in each hand, holding it horizontally. After all, Chris is a retired soldier of the Lighthouse Air Force, so his physical fitness and arm strength are still good, and his hand holding the bucket is very stable. Chris's training method at this time was not that he stole it from the Shaolin Temple or that Luo Guang taught him. After Chris heard Luo Guang's words on the plane yesterday, he thought about it for a long time before going to bed, especially when he thought about the scene where he lost his fighting ability after being hit by Wesker. Regardless of whether Luo Guang really relied on the strength and resistance to blows mentioned before to defeat Wesker, there is always Luo Guang's reason. It seems that Wesker's running speed is not that of a normal person. Chris himself feels that he can't reach that level, so the only two things he can catch up with are the two mentioned by Luo Guang. He must continue to exercise and enhance his running speed. Physical fitness is what matters. So seeing that Jill hadn't gotten up yet, Chris took advantage of this time to start exercising. However, there was no fitness equipment like gym and dumbbells in the hotel, so Chris had to make do with 2 buckets. "Where's Steve? Where did he go?" Luo Guang asked without seeing the living treasure Steve surrounding Claire. Claire took off her sunglasses and said, he went out for a run and said he was getting ready for the days of being on the run. Jill asked strangely, why do you want to flee to the end of the world? And I have cleaned up the computer data on Rodford Island and the Antarctic base. Luo Guang added, in addition, Umbrella is no better than before. They are being suppressed by various forces. Now I don't have time to pay attention to a small character like Steve. Who are you calling a minor character? Steve appeared out of nowhere and said angrily. Luo Guang ignored Steve's anger and asked directly, so what are you going to do next, Steve? Go home. I have no home. Steve was depressed, but only for a few seconds. He quickly cheered up and said, I plan to join Claire and the others in resisting Umbrella, and devoting ourselves to the fight against the biohazard. I don't want what happened to me to happen again. My father was captured by Umbrella for human experimentation, and then I want to do it myself. Steve clenched his fists, his eyes were firm, and hatred for Umbrella Company flashed in his eyes. At this time, Luo Guang realized that the current Steve was much more mature than the middle school boy he first met. He nodded and said, it seems that Steve has grown up. Steve, who was praised, smiled and looked secretly at Claire. Luo Guang didn't give a damn and asked, Chris, how much longer do you want? Any time. Chris knelt down, gently placed the bucket on the ground, and walked over. Seeing this, Luo Guang asked, Chris, don't you need to stretch your muscles? Yeah, I almost forgot. Chris nodded and answered after hearing Luo Guang's words. Chris hasn't had time to exercise since he came to Europe, so Chris, who didn't want others to wait, forgot about it for a while. Stretch the muscles. Is it better if the muscles are not stiff? Curious baby Steve raised his hand and asked. The benefits of stretching include relaxing muscles and ligaments, reducing muscle compression, preventing muscle sprains, increasing the flexibility of muscles and ligaments, and improving human body coordination and balance. It promotes blood circulation, accelerates the excretion of the metabolite creatine, and relieves pain. Muscle soreness symptoms. When muscles are stretched, it can improve the overall synergy of muscle groups, accelerate muscle synthesis, increase muscle mass, etc. If you plan to train for a long time, you must do stretching exercises. After all, Luo Guang had been exercising before time travel, so he answered Steve, which also corresponded to what he told Jill before that he had been exercising recently. Chris, who was stretching his arm muscles, nodded, and Steve looked suddenly enlightened and quickly followed Chris in stretching his shoulder blades. This chapter is not over, please click on the next page to continue reading. After doing it a few times, Luo Guang stopped him, and then Luo Guang taught Steve a few leg stretching movements. After they finished stretching, Luo Guang and everyone came to Chris's room. After Luo Guang finished checking with the scanner, Chris and Claire sat on the bed. Luo Guang and Jill occupied the only two chairs in the room, and Steve didn't mind getting dirty and sat directly on the floor. Who's going to start? Luo Guang asked. We should make trouble for Umbrella Company as before. Luo Guang, what are you going to do? Gil took over and said. Jill, Chris, Claire, Steve and others have gathered together, and naturally they have to carry out operations together. The main purpose is to carry out activities against Umbrella Company just like Chris. Luo Guang had a plan in mind, and said, I have to see how Umbrella reacts to what happened on Lotford Island and the Antarctic base. Claire and I got a little close on the island, although Claire I wasn't the one who opened the cell door, but I was the one who opened her shackles. But in the near future, I want to go back to the lighthouse country and find people I know there to collect information. Luo Guang didn't mention anything about Organization X and the Apocalypse Organization, and when Gil saw this, he didn't say much. I understand. By the way, Luo Guang, if you work for Umbrella Company, do you know where their research institute is? Chris thought that he could get the information he had always wanted to know from Luo Guang. Luo Guang did not answer immediately, but just asked, "What are you going to do?" "Destroy it." Chris's answer was simple and crude. "Then it's useless for me to tell you." Luo Guang shook his head, and without waiting for Chris to question, he said, "The Chicago Branch Research Institute and the Paris Branch Research Institute that I know are both built in bustling cities. When you fight in those places, aren't you afraid of causing biochemical leaks?" Luo Guang then added, "The biochemical crisis that broke out in Raccoon City was partly caused by an accident caused by USS during its mission at the Raccoon City Research Institute." Chris and Claire didn't speak, they were both thinking. If Chris only thought of using violence to solve problems before, now he realizes that he seemed to have thought too simply before. "I didn't expect this. I thought Umbrella's research institutes were all in the suburbs like the underground research institutes in foreign mansions." Chris could only laugh dryly and replied. Claire next to her said, "Indeed, Umbrella Company will build a research institute under the city. Leon and I have visited Umbrella Company's Raccoon City Research Institute." When Jill heard what a few people said, she thought that her time following Chris everywhere seemed to be in vain. However, although the Paris Research Institute is in the city, there seems to be a biological and chemical weapons production factory on the outskirts of Paris. But I only know that there are underground trains connecting the research institute and the factory. As for the entrance to the suburbs, I don't know. Luo Guang has also checked the locations of most of the research institutes in the American branch, but after all, he only checked the locations of the Chicago branch's internal computers before leaving for Europe. Therefore, Luo Guang cannot tell Chris this information for the time being. He is worried that Chris I couldn't help but ran to find trouble with Umbrella's American branch. Otherwise, a large number of Umbrella research institutes will be destroyed, and Umbrella Company will definitely suspect that there is an insider in the company, and Luo Guang, who has only recently checked the locations of research institutes in various places in the Americas, is the first suspect. "Thank you, Luo Guang," Chris said gratefully, and couldn't help but be glad that he didn't say anything impulsive when he was rejected by Luo Guang. Luo Guang felt that it was not possible for them to fight alone. Without their own manpower and no way to make money, they would not be able to go far in their anti-biochemical journey. Thinking of this, Luo Guang said, "Chris, have you ever thought about forming your own power organization? Even if it is a non-governmental organization?" "Yes, but Umbrella's production of biological and chemical weapons has been covered up, and the whereabouts of the survivors in Raccoon City are not known. People in the world now don't pay attention to or even know the existence of biological and chemical weapons." The difficulties Chris has encountered in the past few months have indeed given him the idea of establishing an anti-biochemical organization, but he feels that the time has not come yet. "It's Raccoon City again." Claire whispered, "I think the first thing is to make Umbrella's development of biochemical weapons public." "Is it really okay?" "The people who covered up the truth are also the officials of the Lighthouse Country?" Luo Guang asked. Claire looked around at everyone and said, "Then don't mention the matter of the Lighthouse Country and focus on describing the biological and chemical weapons." Thinking about it, Claire revealed the blueprint she had constructed. "Brother, I plan to return to the Lighthouse Country to find the survivors of Raccoon City. If there is evidence of biological and chemical weapons, we will go to the media in other countries to expose Umbrella corporate sin." "But you are alone." Chris had just rescued Claire from the Umbrella Company's island not long ago, so he was very worried about Claire's safety after going to the Lighthouse Country. "I'll go back with Claire." Steve, who had been listening to everyone silently, finally found a chance to speak and said quickly. Chris looked at the young boy sitting on the ground and felt that he was not stable enough. Thinking of Luo Guang saying that he wanted to go back to the Lighthouse Country, he said to Luo Guang, "Please take care of Claire and Steve when the time comes." Steve scratched his head and did not jump up to refute Chris like before, and used his mouth to show his bravery to Claire. That means Luo Guang, Claire, and Steve will go back to the lighthouse country, and Chris and I will continue to work in Europe, Jill confirmed. No, Claire and Steve, you continue to follow Jill and Chris and learn around first. And Luo Guang felt that if Chris and his team found the biological and chemical weapons production factory outside Paris, they would need more manpower. Learn, Claire and Steve looked at each other. Luo Guang pointed at Steve and said, he is a civilian and has not received professional training. Then he pointed at Claire and said, he is also a civilian. Although Chris taught him self-defense and shooting, he is just an amateur, so he was caught. After saying that, Luo Guang pointed at himself in his heart. He also planned to find an opportunity to improve his combat skills after joining the X organization. After hearing these two words from Luo Guang, Chris and Jill understood what Claire and the others were going to learn from him. It happened that he knew someone in South Africa and could find a training ground, so Jill said, then let's rest and exercise here first. Luo Guang, you go back to the lighthouse country to understand the situation and collect intelligence. Luo Guang nodded, exchanged mobile phone numbers with everyone, and said, but Umbrella also has its own intelligence network in Africa, especially West Africa, which is the focus of Umbrella, so you should be cautious and don't go there stupidly. The progenitor virus is extracted from a flower called Stairs of the Sun that grows in the ruins of the Dubaya tribe in West Africa. Although the virus substances in the flowers of the Stairs of the Sun are not as important as before with the development of the T-virus, it is still the birthplace of Umbrella Corporation, so there are still special people guarding it closely. I understand, Jill replied, and the others nodded. Luo Guang spent a pleasant time with Jill in Funan on the pretext of accompanying Jill. During this period, Luo Guang was surprised that neither Umbrella Corporation nor Organization X contacted him, but this was exactly what Luo Guang wanted, so he didn't care. During this period, he didn't always wander in Jill's gentle place. When Luo Guang was with Jill, he also paid attention to whether there were enemies following him and others to ensure that Jill and others were not monitored by various organizations. There was also an interesting thing in the middle. After Luo Guang personally demonstrated to Chris and Steve that a punch could break a concrete wall, it seemed to stimulate Chris and made Chris determined to become a muscular man. Until the end of January 1999, Luo Guang said goodbye to everyone and began his journey back to the lighthouse country. Meow, I'm so busy, so if I don't update at noon, I will update at night. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 82. Chapter 80 Air Ticket Money. I am Luo Guang. Luo Guang didn't have much luggage, just a backpack. After dealing with some things, he walked on the streets of the capital of Africa and called his ex-organization contact person, Emma Greenwell. Luo Guang tried to call Emma using the phone number given by organization. However, it was not Emma who answered the phone, but Jack Jones, who was inseparable from Emma. Luo Guang? Emma has no time now. Something happened to her. It was the first time Luo Guang heard the tone of Jack, who was more alive than Steve, become so low. He thought that Emma's condition was not optimistic, and she might have been injured and comatose so that she could not answer the call. What happened to Emma? Did Organization X arrange any other contacts for me? Luo Guang's words reminded Jack of what happened to Emma. Jack punched the wall next to him and replied, "We were tricked by Umbrella's bastard. Emma was trying to protect me, so otherwise, how could the strongest of us children be injured?" Luo Guang did not urge the other party or ask the other party what children meant. He guessed the meaning of children while waiting for the other party to calm down. Luo Guang, your contact person is temporarily replaced by me, but my authority is not as high as Emma's, so I can only help you convey the matter to the organization, and the reply may not be as fast as Emma's. In the combination of Jack and Emma, Emma has a better overall view than Jack and is the leader of the group, so Jack, as a temporary contact, can only act as a microphone. I want to join organization. I understand, I will convey it to the higher UPS. By the way, where are you now? Not the capital of Southland. Wait a minute. Jack used his phone to search for the X organization's stronghold in Africa, and then directly reported the address of the first one on the list and the name and apparent identity of the person in charge to Luo Guang. Received. Luo Guang wrote down the address and the person in charge of the stronghold. That's it, goodbye. Like Emma, Jack hung up the phone immediately after talking. Luo Guang put away his mobile phone, found a convenience store and bought a local map, and then went to the address given by Jack. When he arrived at that place, Luo Guang could only say that organization. The place in front of him was the most luxurious hotel in South Africa, and it was also the hotel Luo Guang originally wanted to choose. Fortunately, Jill had a chance to avoid this hotel, otherwise he and others would be stared at when they appeared around the hotel. After walking in, Luo Guang directly asked the front desk clerk to contact the general manager of the hotel. It was also the first time for the front desk clerk to meet a guest like Luo Guang. He was stunned for a moment and confirmed, "Did you say you want to see our general manager?" "That's right." Luo Guang didn't know if the receptionist was from Organization X since he didn't join Organization Yes, but Luo Guang didn't dare to use this thing indiscriminately. The front desk clerk assessed the situation, then nodded and said, "Okay, I'll contact you first." After saying that, the front desk clerk said a few words to the colleagues around him and left his post. After a while, the front desk clerk came over with the manager. "Hello, sir, I am the lobby manager of John Durban Hotel. Do you have anything to do with our general manager?" the lobby manager asked with a professional smile. "Well, I don't know if your level is high enough. It's hard to answer. Can you change the place?" Luo Guang said. The lobby manager's eyes became sharp, and he felt suspicious when he looked at the harmless Luo Guang in front of him. Luo Guang walked to the lobby manager and whispered an English letter, X. After hearing the letter, the lobby manager's face instantly returned to normal. He nodded to Luo Guang and said, "Follow me." After wandering around the hotel, the lobby manager came to an old-fashioned elevator, took out a silver card and swiped it on the card machine next to the elevator, and then the elevator door opened. The lobby manager was always in Luo Guang's sight, and he didn't see him contact the general manager. After taking a look at the surrounding environment, Luo Guang and the other party walked in. After getting out of the elevator, they walked a while and came to a huge and gorgeous double-leaf door. The strange thing is that the lobby manager did not do any security work, such as searching Luo Guang's body. He just knocked on the door and waited for the owner of the room to respond before taking Luo Guang in. Callis Birmingham, behind the huge golden sandalwood desk is a black man wearing small round glasses and a dark blue suit. He should be Kenya, the person in charge of this intelligence base. Botswana. It seems that the name of the lobby manager is Callis Birmingham, Luo Guang thought. Manager Callis stood upright in front of General Manager Kenya and reported Luo Guang to the other party. At this time, the General Manager of Kenya turned his attention to Luo Guang, as if he wanted to see through Luo Guang's true identity. Luo Guang looked back without fear. "Very good, who are you?" Kenya smiled lightly, but it gave people the feeling of a hyena staring at its prey. "I am a peripheral member of the X organization, my name is Luo Guang said. "I know, after all, only peripheral members will call our organization the X organization, so what are you here for?" "And you are looking for me, the head of the African branch of the organization." Kenya typed in Luo Guang's name, glanced at the computer screen beside him, and asked. Hearing the other party's words, Luo Guang had already known the other party's identity and his face was expressionless, but he had already scolded Jack in his heart for giving him the location of the head of the African branch of the X organization. "I want to join the X organization." Luo Guang's words made Kenya laugh, as if he was amused by Luo Guang's presumption. Before crossing, Luo Guang encountered many such things that were looked down upon in his business work, and his heart had long been trained, and he looked at the other party calmly. However, Luo Guang is no longer the inconspicuous little clerk now. Even if he trained his heart, Luo Guang still had a little anger in his heart at this time. But the lobby manager, who was standing less than 3 meters away from Luo Guang, seemed to sense that Luo Guang's heart was not as calm as it appeared on the surface. His right hand, which was not in Luo Guang's sight, reached for his waist. Collis, the lobby manager, had a very dull life recently. He did not do security work because he was the first killer and was confident in himself and in his ability to judge people. In his opinion, a young man like Luo Guang did not look like a battle-hardened warrior. On the other hand, the front desk clerk that Luo Guang found was indeed not a member of the organization, but her colleague next to her was a member of the organization. Therefore, the front desk of the X organization had already entered Luo Guang's face into the database of the X organization for comparison, and informed the lobby manager Collis that the other party was an intelligence agent of the umbrella company, so Collis had absolute confidence to subdue Luo Guang before Luo Guang reached for the gun. Collis, don't be nervous, and don't think of Luo Guang as a reckless young man who doesn't care about the consequences. Kenya stopped laughing and raised his hand to press down on the lobby manager. Yes, the lobby manager let his hands drop naturally, holding his right wrist with his left hand and placing it in front of him. Kenya nodded with satisfaction, turned to Luo Guang and said, "Luo Guang, the organization does have a high opinion of you. The recent tasks have been completed very well, especially the matter in Danforth City. You did a good job, otherwise it would be difficult to deal with if the matter got out of hand. But do you think this is enough?" Kenya asked Luo Guang in a serious tone. "Luo Guang, your current peripheral identity is already very good, at least you have enough money. Why do you still want to join our organization?" "Because I don't want to be a tool all the time. What's the use of more money? Whether I have money or not is just a matter of your words." Luo Guang understood this too well, and the X organization could take back what he gave him at any time. Kenya's general manager raised his chin proudly, agreed with Luo Guang's statement, and asked again, "So do you have enough chips?" Under the watchful eyes of the lobby manager, Luo Guang took out the small four-legged robot parts of the HCF organization and the blood sample of the Hunter 2, and placed them on the low square table in front of the desk. "What are these?" Kenya pushed his eye sockets and asked. "These things are all obtained from my recent mission. Since the other party can check his information, Luo Guang doesn't need to say it again from the beginning, and directly tells the source of these two things, but Luo Guang hides the name of the HCF organization. Can it be controlled and commanded biological weapons? After all, Africa is also a place that Umbrella Company attaches great importance to, so Kenya, as the head of the X organization in Africa, naturally knows a lot about biological weapons. However, those biological weapons are not ready for use now, right? Don't you see the current predicament of Umbrella Corporation? But if we don't start research and development now, when biological weapons can be put on the table, it will be too late for Organization X to develop them. Of course, I'm not worried that Organization X can catch up with others, but this will consume a lot of resources. The fact that the organization is not short of money is not a reason to waste money casually. Mr. Luo, are you so sure that biological weapons can be put on the table in the future? The matter of Umbrella Corporation can only be concealed for a while." Luo Guang's words made Kenya see that Luo Guang had a look that was not mentioned in the intelligence, and continued to ask, "Why?" "The Lighthouse country also took action to cover up the truth. The Lighthouse country also has enemies, and who knows whether Umbrella Corporation will fight to the death and break the jar in the future." "I see, but we have people in every branch of Umbrella Corporation, especially the American branch. They can't make trouble." Kenya refuted Luo Guang's point of view. "Since the X organization is so powerful, may I ask if the X organization knows the location of Oswell Edward Spencer, the founder of Umbrella Corporation?" Luo Guang's words made Kenya feel that his organization was underestimated by the other party, and he couldn't help but frown. After typing on the keyboard to check the information of the organization, Kenya said, "I really don't know, or do you mean that our organization has not infiltrated all departments of Umbrella Corporation?" Luo Guang nodded. He, it seems that our organization's evaluation of you should be improved a little bit. Kenya asked, "So do you know where Spencer is?" Luo Guang shook his head, indicating that he didn't know. Kenya thought about the value of what Luo Guang brought, nodded, shook his head, made up his mind, and said, "What you brought can indeed bring huge benefits to the organization, but it is not enough. But I can give you a huge bonus, and even if you want something special, I can get women like celebrities." This chapter is not over yet, please click on the next page to continue reading. The other party's answer was within Luo Guang's psychological expectations, but Luo Guang still showed a little regretful expression and said, "No need for women. In addition to money, can you trouble the organization to send me back to Chicago, the lighthouse country?" Kenya nodded and said, "Okay, a special plane will pick you up, and the things on the table will be left. Collis, see you off." Luo Guang showed a trace of reluctance on his face, gritted his teeth and nodded, and got up to leave. Kenya showed a victorious smile. In his opinion, the value of the samples and electronic chips on the table was much higher than what Luo Guang imagined. Perhaps he could get a share of the new cake of the biological and chemical weapons department that the organization was going to set up. "Happy cooperation, Collis. You are responsible for arranging Mr. Luo's return to the lighthouse country." Received. Collis, the lobby manager, took the order and left with Luo Guang. Sitting in the VIP cabin of the special plane to Chicago, Luo Guang closed his eyes and recalled the previous conversation with the head of the African branch of the X organization. This is the sadness of the peripheral personnel, and it also made Luo Guang understand that Emma's position in the X organization may not be that simple, and provided Luo Guang with various help. At first, Luo Guang just wanted to ask for help so that he could take all kinds of items that could not be put on the plane back to the lighthouse country. But the first time Luo Guang saw Kenya, he knew that the person in front of him was a greedy person, just like that smile, a hyena. If he simply asked for help without letting the other party bite off a piece of meat, the other party would definitely refuse the request of Luo Guang, a peripheral member. Therefore, Luo Guang had to change his plan and put the things of the HCF organization on the table as his bargaining chip, or the money for the return ticket. Luo Guang could tell from the other party's final smile of victory that the value of the HCF organization's stuff was higher than he thought, but he just didn't have enough information. As mentioned before, peripheral personnel are just tools, and one sentence can make him fall from heaven to hell. However, he still had the T. Veronica virus, so he still had enough bargaining chips, but Luo Guang felt that he still needed Emma Greenwell's help. Meow, powerless meow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 83. Chapter 81. Rebirth Number 1. Luo Guang, who returned to Chicago, planned to find Jack again. If Jack's route failed, Luo Guang would have no choice but to risk going back to the Chicago branch to find Minister Guslin. This risk is not just for Luo Guang, but also for Minister Guslin. Alas. Luo Guang returned to the hotel in Chicago, finished checking, sighed, and then dialed Jack Jones's number. "Jack, is Emma's condition better?" Luo Guang first said a word of concern. "Still in a coma, but her life is no longer in danger. It's just Emma." Jack was not in a high mood, but he felt much better than at the beginning. "What's wrong?" Luo Guang was puzzled, praying in his heart that Emma wouldn't be unconscious. Jack didn't answer immediately. After thinking about Luo Guang's identity, he made up his mind and chose what to say. Emma's arm is gone because of a serious injury. Although Jack usually looks carefree, it doesn't mean that he doesn't understand anything. What he is resisting at this time is not Luo Guang, nor the people of Umbrella who are on passive defense, but the organization to which he belongs. Although Emma is out of danger, is Emma, who has lost an arm, still valuable to the organization? In addition, Emma knows a lot of things about the organization. Although it is not a core secret, it is not something that can be put on the table. Jack has seen too many people and has dealt with too many people who are of no use to the organization, whether within or outside the organization. Therefore, during the time when Emma was injured, Jack and his best brother stayed by Emma's side, and the hospital they chose to treat Emma was not owned by X organization or had a background in X organization. What about adding a robotic arm or something? If Emma's injury affects her combat effectiveness, and it's worthless, the organization probably won't save Emma until now, right? Luo Guang thought Emma was treated in the organization's hospital. That's why it is said. Jack did not tell Luo Guang that Emma was not treating this matter in the organization's medical institution. He just said, the military's mechanical prosthetic technology is not mature yet, and the neural connection technology is still under development, and it is very difficult for Emma and me. The machine is definitely not as good as the original one. Luo Guang only casually mentioned the robotic arm as a prosthetic arm, but the robotic arm Jack mentioned seemed to be a cyberpunk prosthetic body, and he specifically mentioned the military. Does Organization X have an official background? Wait a minute, Jack, I may have a solution here. Luo Guangxian took the opportunity to sell Emma and Jack a favor, just as he wanted to try using viruses and systems to create potions that could be used for medical purposes. So Luo Guang first asked Jack to wait, then asked the system a question and got a feasible reply from the system. As for why Luo Guang wants to help Emma, in addition to selling favors and testing the abilities he recently thought of, Luo Guang also wants to expand the relationship in the X organization in advance and ensure that Emma provides a communication bridge for him to join the X organization. Luo Guang just asked the system that his body can generate a time-sensitive self-healing virus fragment. After careful adjustment, Luo Guang's blood has the ability to regenerate severed limbs. The only question is whether others can bear it. As for the source of the virus agent tentatively named Rebirth Number 1, just say that it was obtained from the Antarctic base. However, the computer data Luo Guang obtained at the Antarctic base did not contain any information about this stuff. It seems that in the future, Antarctica the base data cannot be handed over, and a reasonable explanation must be found. Wrong. Luo Guang suddenly thought of a problem. After he assisted in completing the organization's task of acquiring the parasite Nemesis Alpha, Organization X did not give him a new task, so there was no need for him to give those data to Organization X. The organization doesn't know either. And he has a better candidate to take the blame, and that is Wesker's HCF organization. Jack on the other side of the phone heard that Luo Guang might have a solution, but he didn't dare to hang up the phone. It was rare for him to calm down and wait for Luo Guang. Although Luo Guang is only a peripheral member of the organization, Jack knows that viruses such as the T-virus have the characteristics of self-healing and regeneration, so Jack believes that Luo Guang, an undercover agent of Umbrella, may have that information. Jack, I recently obtained a potion. I grabbed this potion from the enemy. Judging from the effect of the enemy's use, it seems that it can regenerate people's severed limbs. Luo Guang's words made Jack's eyes light up, but then Luo Guang's words put Jack in a dilemma. But this is the enemy's medicine after all. I don't know if it requires a specific constitution or auxiliary medicine. It may even be just an activator to stimulate the enemy to inject substances into the body in advance. So can Emma use it? Is there any rejection? I don't know about the reaction, so before using it, you'd better ask Emma what she thinks and decide whether to try it. Luo Guang didn't dare to say so harshly. After all, it was a thing he had just created. Even if the system said it had passed the simulation test, it had never passed the actual test. Luo Guang, where are you? Jack and Emma have been together for so long. Naturally, he understands Emma's character. Emma, who thinks she is stronger, will definitely choose to try Luo Guang's potion after learning that she has lost her arm. If that potion could really regenerate a person's severed limbs, it would be of immeasurable value. Jack didn't expect Luo Guang to take out such an important thing. However, no matter what purpose or trap Luo Guang had, Jack felt that he had no other choice. Everything was for Emma. It's just that Jack still remembers that the phones the two of them were using at this time were both organized by X, so he must first get the potion, Luo Guang, in his hands. This chapter is not over. Please click on the next page to continue reading. It's the hotel you introduced to me, Luo Guang replied. What? Luo Guangqi, first go to the cafe across the road from the hotel and wait for me. I'll have someone pick you up right away. The person who picks you up is Mark N. Jack's words made Luo Guang feel a little confused, thinking that he was obviously in a place with X organization background. Why was Jack acting so nervous? Luo Guang was shocked and had an idea. Is Jack wary of Organization X? After suffering the loss of Wang Wei following him, Luo Guang repeatedly confirmed that no one was following him while waiting for someone in the cafe. After sitting in the car smoothly, Mark N., the brother sent by Jack, said to Luo Guang, "Where did that magical potion come from?" Sure enough, Jack and the others can't hide their affairs from Organization X. Luo Guang didn't think Jack would tell such an important thing about Rebirth Number 1 potion, even if the other person was the brother Jack mentioned, so he tried it out. Did I reveal my secret? Or did you guess it? Markin seemed to have no ill intentions towards Luo Guang and asked like a friend. I'll just try to ask. Luo Guang looked at the scenery outside the car, thinking how could it be possible that with the energy of Organization. Maybe Organization X was secretly amused when they saw that Jack was treating Emma at his own expense. It's just that Jack sent Markin over. Luo Guang didn't know whether Jack did it intentionally, or whether Jack ignored the surrounding problems because he was focusing on Emma. Haha, Markin said with a smile, yes, it was because of Organization help. After hearing what the other party said, the only thing Luo Guang thought of was that no matter what the relationship between Mark N and Jack was, Jack's brothers could not be trusted. Aren't you afraid that I will tell Jack these things directly? Luo Guang asked. I heard that you want to join the organization. Mark N did not directly answer Luo Guang's words, but asked another thing. It seems that the person in charge of Africa reported that he wanted to join organization. Luo Guang thought about it and said, yes, Umbrella is going to fall. I have to find a towering tree to protect myself. Wise choice. In that case, why not donate the medicine that can regenerate severed limbs to the organization? Markin continued, I can take you to the head of the organization in Chicago right now and donate the medicine. Oh? I thought you were on your way to the local person in charge now? As for why you don't offer it, as I said on the phone before, I only have one of that thing, and I don't know if there are any other conditions for use. Conditions, whether the limb can be reborn is still unknown. If it fails, it will not be possible. As Luo Guang spoke, he was thinking about whether to hint to the other party that he had a better elixir of immortality. The other party accepted Luo Guang's statement and said, it is precisely because of this concern that we and the leaders above ordered me to take you to the hospital in accordance with Jack's instructions. It's just right to use Emma, a guy who may be turned into waste, for experiments. Although the above instructions are so, in Mark's opinion, there is only one magic medicine that needs to be analyzed and analyzed more, rather than saving a useless person who may be abandoned. On the other side, Luo Guang heard Mark's gritted tone when talking about Emma, and couldn't help but wonder if Emma and Jack were very disliked in the organization. Luo Guang, Emma is awake, Jack said to Luo Guang anxiously. Markin just kindly withdrew, leaving space for Luo Guang, Jack, and Emma. There was no blood on Emma's face, her lips were pale, the right-hand part of her hospital gown was empty, and her entire right arm had disappeared, but the look in her eyes was as cold as before. Not long after she was out of danger, Emma woke up. She just slept most of the time because she was in urgent need of rest. Luo Guang, I have told Emma what you said. Emma wants to try it. Regardless of whether it succeeds or loses her life, we will not blame you. After Jack finished speaking, Emma nodded slightly. The other party doesn't blame himself, just listen to what he said, Luo Guang thought, and took out the light red rebirth number 1. It was filled with the syringe used by Umbrella Company to collect the blood of biochemical infectious agents. Umbrella's medicine, Jack asked. Luo Guang shook his head and said, those enemies are not, but I think they may be related to Umbrella Company. That Wesker is the best evidence that the enemy is connected with Umbrella Company, Luo Guang added in his heart. Jack nodded, looked at Emma with a worried look, and asked, what should we do in advance? Luo Guang had already inquired about the system and said, I think they injected it directly, but the wounds on their severed limbs were not healed at that time. I think nutrition also needs to keep up. That's good, but as for nutrition, although I have been given infusions during this period, but... Jack said. The wound on Emma's right arm has not completely healed after the bleeding stopped, so Emma does not need to be stabbed again. She was just out of danger and consumed a lot of energy, so Jack said very worriedly, how many more days? But those enemies insist on using it immediately after being injured, even in battle, and it will be very troublesome for Emma's wound to heal in a few days. Are you sure you want to wait? Luo Guang wanted to record Emma's condition after using it, but he didn't want to wait here. Besides, Jack wouldn't let Luo Guang leave directly before Emma injected rebirth number 1. Jack. Emma on the bed didn't want to see her empty right arm when she opened her eyes, and said, I can hold on. Okay, Emma. Jack didn't argue, respecting Emma's will. After getting ready, Jack helped Emma take off half of her shirt and unwrap the gauze on her right arm. Luo Guang stood on Emma's left side, injecting rebirth number 1 into Emma's white arm. The medicine made this time is called rebirth number 1, so Emma is naturally white mouse number 1. In rebirth number 1, Luo Guang used the system to intercept the self-healing genes in the T virus, and then added gene fragments created by the system to limit the time limit and limit excessive growth, ensuring that these self-healing genes would not remain in the body for a long time or grow uncontrollably. Mutations. It was better than Luo Guang imagined. The wound on Emma's right arm began to close, and a small pink hand grew out visibly to the naked eye. Luo Guang glanced at Emma, who fell into coma immediately after being injected with rebirth number 1. He increased the dripping speed of the nutrient solution and said, she needs a lot of energy. The little hand continued to grow, like a thriving sapling. Luo Guang kept staring at Emma's right arm, recording the situation. In less than 5 minutes, Emma's right arm was almost the same as her left arm, except that Emma had lost a lot of weight and lost a lot of chest fat, which made Jack very distressed. Luo Guang nodded. 5 minutes was a long time on the ever-changing battlefield, but it was acceptable in terms of effect. This was more in line with his statement about the source of rebirth number 1. This, actually grew. Jack looked at Emma's grown hand in surprise. He didn't have much hope in Luo Guang's potion. He actually didn't have much hope in his heart. Luo Guang glanced at Jack and said, okay, remember to supplement your nutrition later. I'll leave first. Jack quickly stepped forward, held Luo Guang's hand, and said thank you, I will be there wherever I am needed in the future. Luo Guang nodded, walked out of the ward, and immediately saw Mark N and Jack's other brothers standing next to him. However, Luo Guang saw their eyes looking at him and smiled bitterly. The positions and sidelines of the 4 people in front of them have changed from when they came. Rather than guarding against external attackers, they are more likely to monitor the situation in the room. Mark N., who brought Luo Guang to the hospital, whispered a few words through the communicator, then walked straight to Luo Guang and said, "Our team leader wants to see you." Meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 84. Chapter 82 Joining the Family. Luo Guang felt that he could still defeat the four people in front of him, but Luo Guang did not act rashly. Instead, he asked about the situation first to see if he could collect information. "Captain?" The leader of Organization X, Luo Guang asked. "We are a combat department belonging to Organization X, and the regiment leader is the code name of the leader of our combat department." Mark N felt that it was difficult for Luo Guang to fly, so he revealed some information to Luo Guang, but it was just a sentence without much substance. Luo Guang nodded and looked at the other people who stood up and gathered around him, wondering if this was the Hungmen banquet. However, Luo Guang did not resist. Being able to meet with higher-level people seemed to be a good choice for him to promote his homemade T. Veronica virus. Of course, the most important thing was that Luo Guang's combat ability at this time gave Luo Guang confidence. After walking out of the hospital, Luo Guang sat in the car he came in before, put on the hood the other party gave him, and after walking around for several times, he arrived outside a villa in the suburbs. After getting out of the car, Luo Guang took off his hood and began to check the surrounding environment. The villa in front of him occupied a large area. The wall that Luo Guang saw was at least 200 to 300 meters wide. After following Markin in, Luo Guang was taken to a study room. "Captain, Luo Guang is here." Markin knocked on the door softly and respectfully. After being allowed in, he brought Luo Guang in and saluted the person sitting behind the desk with a Lighthouse National military salute. "You go out and guard. Don't come in without my order, no matter what the noise is," the regiment leader ordered. Markin did not hesitate at all because he was worried that Luo Guang would be disadvantageous to the group leader. He directly followed the order and left, closing the door behind him. The leader looked to be an old man in his 50s or 60s, but he looked energetic. He was wearing a camouflage shirt, which outlined his unexpectedly strong muscles. However, his expression was very amiable. When I think of it, I think of Mark N. With his behavior just now, Luo Guang felt that the old man in front of him was not weak in fighting ability. "Sit down." The leader stood up, pointed to the two sofas on the other side, and invited. Luo Guang nodded and sat face to face with the group leader on the sofa, waiting for the other party to speak. "You can call me Captain Sci-Fi, Luo Guang." "Hello, Captain Sheffield." Luo Guang looked very reserved and did not let down his guard because of the amiable appearance of the other party. Captain Sheffield also noticed Luo Guang's vigilance, but he didn't say much and went straight to the topic. "Luo Guang, where did you get the potion that can regenerate severed limbs?" Hearing that Captain Sheffield didn't ask about the effect of the medicine, Luo Guang speculated that the other party would have a monitor in the ward, so when he came out, the four people guarding the door would take their positions and not be afraid to come out. "There is also Jack Jones, who has been kept in the dark." Luo Guang had already prepared his words, so he immediately replied, "When I was doing the mission for Umbrella Company, the enemies I encountered carried them with them. Because the battle was fierce, I only harvested one." "What is that organization? Does it have a name?" "I don't know. Their biochemical weapons research and development is no worse than Umbrella's. The biochemical weapons they use can already perform certain tasks under the guidance of robots." Luo Guang pretended to remember, moved his eyes to the upper left, paused, and then said, "The only clue is a man named Albert Wesker. He was originally from Umbrella Company. Suspended death and left the organization during an incident." Luo Guang didn't know whether Umbrella had received any information about Wesker after the incident at Rotford Island and the Antarctic base, and he didn't know Wesker's characterization, so he didn't say anything about betrayal. "Albert Wesker." Captain Sheffield secretly wrote down the name and repeated it in a low voice. Commander Sci-Fi, do you have any questions? Luo Guang asked after Commander Sci-Fi finished thinking and looked at himself. Captain Sheffield did not beat around the bush and said directly, I have received information. Do you want to join our organization? Yes. After Luo Guang confirmed the other party's speaking style, he was ready to speak bluntly. So how much do you know about our organization? If you are rich and powerful, your power is overwhelming. Luo Guang switched to English and said. It's very suitable, but very superficial, Captain Sheffield said with a smile, but if you peripheral members really understand the purpose of our organization, I will doubt your purpose. Luo Guang didn't answer, waiting for the other party's next words. Our organization, you could call it the family. Family, isn't that the organization led by Derek C. Simmons? Luo Guang was a little surprised. Huh? Captain Sci-Fi stared at Luo Guang. He seemed to see something from Luo Guang's reaction. If Luo Guang knew nothing about the family, he shouldn't have shown a trace of surprise, but should have been calmer, so Captain Sheffield immediately asked, do you know about the family? I seem to have heard the name of this organization somewhere. The other person sounded like the mastermind behind a conspiracy theory, so I just took it as a joke from the words of Captain Sheffield. Luo Guang knew that it was his own. His expression was revealing, and he didn't dare to hesitate at all in his answer. After speaking, he quickly thought about how to remedy it. Where? Captain Sheffield asked, and he also had a suspicion in his mind. Considering that Luo Guang worked for Umbrella Company, he suspected that Luo Guang had heard about it from Umbrella Company. This chapter is not finished yet, please click on the next page to continue reading the exciting content. Luo Guang, considering his identity and recent experience, pretended to recall the past and said, if I remember correctly, it was someone from Umbrella's European branch who said this during a break. I just took it as a joke and turned around and forgot about it. Luo Guang's words were exactly in line with Captain Sheffield's conjecture. Are you chatting about conspiracy theories? Captain Sheffield thought. There are so many aristocratic families in Europe and the United States. Hiding the family name and only calling his organization a family is indeed in line with the tone of the mysterious organization in conspiracy theories. But Luo Guang, you seemed a little surprised just now. Luo Guang's words could not explain why he was surprised, and just now Luo Guang said that he only took it as a joke and turned around and forgot about it. Luo Guang did not deny it and said, yes. When you just said that, leader, I remembered that I had heard such a story. I didn't expect that the mysterious organization they were joking about was actually true. This explanation is acceptable to Captain Sheffield. After all, the conspiracy theory was promoted by his family organization. In the future, whenever someone suggests that there is some mastermind behind the scenes, the person in charge of the media department can label the other person as a conspiracy theorist, thereby suppressing the other person's momentum. Okay, let's continue the previous topic. The family is an ancient organization founded by the British Simons family before the Lighthouse Countries' War of Independence. Its internal roundtable members are all of noble descent, so you must treat them with caution when you meet them, and the family leader is Derek C. Simmons. This time, Luo Guang's expression management was normal and Captain Sheffield didn't notice the problem. This family organization, if Luo Guang remembers correctly, the members of the round table have used their bloodline advantages to gradually penetrate into the upper echelons of European and American countries all year round, and even control the lifeblood of some countries. There are several purposes for establishing this organization. One is naturally to safeguard the interests of our organization on a global scale, and the second is to maintain the social stability and world status of the lighthouse country. In order to let Luo Guang know from which angle he should think about problems in future actions, Captain Sheffield told Luo Guang the purpose of the organization. But Luo Guang was a little strange, thinking, shouldn't the purpose of this organization called family be to conquer the world? So you did a good job reporting about the Blood Plague King in Danforth City before. The military did not discover the existence of that thing. If the blood plague virus is leaked outside the Trumbull Valley blockade, then the entire lighthouse country and even the entire world will be in big trouble. Then put the blood plague virus into other countries. Luo Guang said tentatively. Captain Sheffield shook his head and said, the other party that has obtained the blood plague virus sample will also release it back, and there may be other viruses developed by other countries that will be released into our country. Luo Guang, although it is not a nuclear weapon, it still poses a great threat to the country, especially the civilians responsible for production. Later, Captain Sheffield said earnestly, Luo Guang, we do not pray for the destruction of the world. It is not good for us to destroy modern civilization and modern society, so recently the family mentioned that we should form an army to curb the development of biochemical crises. I understand as long as this organization doesn't want to destroy the world, then anything can be said, Luo Guang thought. As for you joining the family, I can make the decision for you to join, but you can only join my department. Leader Sheffield would agree to join him. Luo Guang had a hunch when the other party introduced the family organization, otherwise there would be no need for the other party to tell him so much. Captain, your department, I heard it's the combat department, Luo Guang confirmed. Commander Sheffield did not answer directly, but asked, do you know about the military's super soldier plan? I've heard of it, but didn't it say that the plan failed, Luo Guang concluded. The reason why Luo Guang believes that the plan failed is because the international situation has not changed much and there is no publicity from the military. It failed, but it also left some results. Captain Sheffield told Luo Guangdao, the plan to create super soldiers through mechanical prostheses in Plana has reached a deadlock because the problem of neural connections cannot be solved, but it is still after accumulating experience. We turned from cost and other aspects to developing individual soldier exoskeletons and even power armor. Plan B for the super soldiers is to start directly from humans and strengthen the soldiers into omnipotent super soldiers through genetic engineering or other means. Later, those researchers discovered that due to age, adults' bodies had basically been fixed, and they had a violent rejection reaction to those strengthening methods. Then a serious accident occurred during an experiment, and the entire experiment was directly abandoned. Since you are older, find someone younger, Luo Guang thought, and suddenly thought of a word that Emma and the others mentioned. School, Luo Guang asked. Captain Sheffield raised his eyebrows. Oh? Do you know about the school? It is said that Jack was born in the school. Yes, both Emma and Jack are children chosen in the Super Soldier program. The Super Soldier plan is not something that needs to be kept secret within the family organization, so Captain Sheffield, who intends to recruit Luo Guang, paused, showed a kind expression on his face, and said to Luo Guang, actually, Ai Ma Greenwell is my daughter, and I was a member of the Lighthouse Army. You used your daughter for experiments. Luo Guang had a normal relationship with Emma, so he would not yell at Captain Sheffield for her, but he just asked slightly in surprise. Captain Sheffield sighed and said, Emma had a strange disease before. She tried all kinds of methods and doctors but couldn't cure it. Then I learned that this experiment can strengthen the human body. The project researchers are evaluating it. Later, he also expressed that there was a chance to suppress Emma's condition, so. At this time, Captain Sheffield said as a father, so I am very grateful to you for saving my daughter's hand and allowing her to retain the opportunity to take over my position in the future. After hearing what Captain Sheffield said, Luo Guang felt that Emma's life would not be in any danger regardless of whether he could save Emma's arm. This is why Mark and the others would stay outside the room as Jack wished. I see, Luo Guang said, so if I join the family, I can only join your department. Captain Sheffield shook his head and said that he did not let Luo Guang join because he saved his daughter, and said, I didn't let you join because you saved my daughter. Then, Luo Guang said strangely. Apart from his status as a senior intelligence officer of Umbrella Company, Luo Guang has always been curious about what Organization X values in him. Captain Sheffield gave the answer to Luo Guang's question. Actually, after what happened in Raccoon City, the family wanted to expand its combat team to deal with possible biochemical crises in the future. The original plan is that after you complete anti-biochemical training and perform missions with the USS recruits, we will contact you and formally invite you to join our newly formed troops for anti-biochemical military operations. Are those USS recruits yours? Then Death Hank. Luo Guang couldn't help but doubt Death Hank's position. Captain Sheffield shook his head and said, those recruits are, but Death Hank is not. We just asked USS to help us train a group of teams, and then they will perform a mysterious mission with you. And during the mission, we will leave Umbrella as Mia. In fact, we will directly transfer to the combat force of the family organization. Luo Guang figured out the organization's plan. Yes, so we are actually interested in your identity as a survivor of Raccoon City. In addition, you are a senior intelligence agent of Umbrella Company, so you are a good choice for us to form an anti-biological and chemical force. Commander Sheffield paused and said, it's a pity that the plan couldn't keep up with the changes. The newly trained USS recruits were sent by Umbrella to complete a mission just after completing basic training, and that mission was not arranged by us. Although I have experience in biohazards in Raccoon City and Trumbull Valley, it seems that there is no need to find an intelligence person to join the combat force, right? Luo Guang still had questions. There are not many intelligence agents with biohazard experience. In addition, you have contact with the people of STARS, which allows us to use your relationship with them to carry out anti-biohazard activities, and even break into the circle of anti-biohazard forces that will appear later. But that's all for the future. Now your first task in joining the Red Claws is not to fight, but to monitor them and find talents that the organization can use. Aren't those recruits completely loyal to the family? Luo Guang thought to himself, wouldn't he become a monitor like Nikolai? Sheffield shook his head in unity and said, you are loyal, but your new force needs to come to the table and join a force called the Red Claws, and the Red Claws will recruit people from all over the world. Red Claws? Luo Guang wondered where this army came from. The current Red Claw personnel are adapted from the private security army of Weston Consolidated Construction Company. In fact, that construction company is owned by a roundtable member of the family, and that company is in Danforth. There is a large warehouse in the city, so our family knows the good things the military is doing there. Could it be Umbrella's intelligence source? Luo Guang suddenly thought of a possibility. No, it was revealed by us, Captain Sheffield explained. After all, it is related to the military, so it is best to do that kind of thing in the name of Umbrella Company. Then what do I want to do? Luo Guang needed to determine what he wanted to do, and by the way, he wanted to think about whether he could use the Red Claw troops to do something. Commander Sheffield chuckled and said, it's very simple, fight against the biochemical crisis, and then collect intelligence. I will arrange for you to lead a special operations team to carry out operations around the world, and you will collect intelligence from those places. Just summarize it and give it to the organization. I changed the content again, so it's a lot late.